I was alive once, before the knives, before the hooks, before the screams became currency and pain became sustenance. I remember fragments of that time, though each passing cycle erodes those memories further. They slip through my fingers like blood across polished obsidian. My name was Draven Clith. Perhaps it's still Island. Names hold little meaning in Comorag, the Dark City. Here, we are defined not by what we are called, but by what we endure and what we inflict. I was human once, dragged screaming through the shimmering veil of a webway portal by creatures whose elegant cruelty defied comprehension. I believed I had glimpsed demons. I was wrong. Demons would have been merciful. The dark Eldar, the Drukhari, the fallen children of a fallen empire. They do not take slaves for labor or conquest. They harvest souls to feed upon our suffering, to fill the gnawing emptiness where their souls should be, and I am now one of them, not by birth, but by horrible transformation. A rack, a living canvas for the flesh sculptors, a tool wielded by greater monsters. I feel the alterations even now. My spine elongated and reinforced with surgical precision. My nerve endings rewired to experience pain with exquisite sensitivity. My skin peeled back in places and kept eternally raw. These modifications were not punishments but privileges bestowed upon me after I proved my usefulness. After I demonstrated my willingness to survive at any cost. The air in Comorag tastes of electricity and copper, charged with ambient suffering and spilled vitae. The spires of the Dark City pierce upward like blades thrust into the underbelly of reality itself. We exist in the space between spaces, hidden within the ancient webway network created by the Eldar of old. Their ancestors built highways through reality. Their descendants built a slaughterhouse at the crossroads. The light here never changes. It emanates from stolen suns, trapped in containment fields, and slowly drained of energy. Just as we are all slowly drained. Just as everything here serves as sustenance for something else. I walk the knife edge between servant and experiment. My master is a homunculus, an ancient flesh sculptor who has cheated death countless times by storing his essence in the pain of others. He is older than most human civilizations. His name translates poorly to human language, but the closest approximation would be he who arranges nervous systems into pleasing patterns. I call him Master when I must speak at all. Today I prepare his laboratory for a new subject. I arrange the blades, the neural probes, the alchemical solutions that prevent death while maximizing agony. There is an art to this work, a precision. The homunculi do not simply torture, they elevate suffering to a transcendent experience. They are scientists, artists, and theologians of pain. The laboratory occupies a chamber that seems to breathe. The walls pulse with a rhythm that might be mechanical or organic. It is impossible to tell where architecture ends and biology begins in the Dark City. Everything here lives in some fashion, though nothing here truly lives well. I hear the approach of the Kabbalite warriors before I see them. Their footsteps land with predatory lightness, a cadence designed to unsettle prey. They drag something between them. Someone. The subject. I do not look up from my preparations. Eye contact can be interpreted as challenge or presumption. Either could result in my being promoted from servant to subject. The Archon sends his regards. One warrior says, voice melodic despite the cruelty in the words. This one led a resistance on the human world, designated 7380. Killed 17 of our raiders before capture. I risk a glance. The human is male, muscular, with the remnants of military insignia still visible on his tattered uniform. His eyes burn with defiance. I remember that fire. It gutters quickly here. The Archon requests something special. The warrior continues. Something worthy of his collection. My master stirs from his contemplation. He has been perfectly motionless for hours, conserving his ancient energies. When he moves, it is with the careful deliberation of a spider approaching a trembling web. Tell your Archon that defiance has its own unique flavor. My master responds, voice wet and clicking like insects moving through decaying matter. I shall isolate it, distill it, and return it to him in a form he can savor for centuries. The warriors secure the human to the central apparatus. His struggles are impressive but futile. The restraints are both physical and metaphysical, binding muscle and will simultaneously. As the Kabbalites withdraw, one pauses near me, head tilting with predatory curiosity. This one was made, not born, she observes, studying my modified form. How fascinating that it serves willingly. I keep my eyes lowered. Survival necessitates adaptation. She laughs. A sound like crystal breaking. It speaks Imperial Gothic still, though its vocal apparatus has been enhanced. Quaint, like preserving a childhood toy. After they depart, my master approaches the bound human. The subject spits curses, threatens retribution from his emperor, promises a death that will echo through eternity. All the usual protestations. All meaningless here. Draven, my master addresses me without looking away from his new canvas. Tell our guest what awaits him. It is a test. It is always a test. I approach the struggling human, meeting his gaze directly. I see myself reflected in his eyes, not as I am now, but as I was then, newly captured, clinging to humanity like a shield. There is no rescue, I tell him, my voice modulated by the surgical modifications to my throat, creating harmonics no human vocal cords could produce. There is no escape. There is no merciful death to release you. You exist now as nourishment. Your pain sustains creatures who have lived for millennia by feeding on suffering. They are masters of preventing death while maximizing agony. The human's expression shifts from defiance to dawning horror. Your resistance is anticipated, valued, even. It will be harvested along with your screams. Your hope will be cultivated, then repeatedly crushed. Your memories will be extracted and replayed for you in corrupted form. Your identity will be systematically dismantled until you cannot remember who you were before this table. My master makes a sound of approval. But there is one mercy, I continue. Eventually, your mind will break. You will adapt. You might even, as I did, become useful enough to be remade instead of simply unmade. That is the only victory available to you now. Not escape, not defiance, but transformation. The human begins to weep, the first crack in the armor, the first step in a journey I know intimately. My master places a hand on my shoulder. His fingers are impossibly long, tipped with implements that could either caress or flay with equal precision. Well spoken, Draven. You have learned much since your arrival. Perhaps soon we shall discuss further enhancements for you. Would you like that? I bow my head. I live to serve, Master. It is not a lie. Not entirely. I live because I serve. I serve because the alternative is to become like the weeping human on the table, and I have been on that table enough for several lifetimes. As my master begins his work, I assist with practiced efficiency. I hand him tools. I monitor the subject's vital signs. I adjust the alchemical drips that keep the human conscious and responsive no matter what is done to him, and I remember my own time on the table. The lessons carved into my flesh, the simple truth that the dark Eldar taught me through endless suffering. In Camorra, even the tormentors live in perpetual terror. We hurt others because it postpones our own pain. We inflict suffering because the alternative is to endure it. The human screams begin in earnest now. I focus on my tasks, compartmentalizing as I was trained to do, but beneath my concentration, a constant awareness remains, the knowledge that in the dark city there are no innocents, only predators and prey, and the terrible understanding that at any moment our roles could be reversed. Outside the laboratory, beyond the pulsing walls and twisted corridors, Camorra continues its eternal feast. The dark city hungers, and we are all, in our own ways, just meat for the table. I was human once, now I am a rack. Tomorrow, who can say? In Camorra, identity is as mutable as flesh in the hands of a skilled homunculus, and my master is very skilled indeed. The cycle of pain continues uninterrupted in Camorra. Time holds little meaning here. We mark its passage not by days or years but by transformations, by the ebb and flow of power between the great houses, by the raids into real space that bring fresh meat for the never-ending hunger. I walk through the screaming halls, a thoroughfare connecting my master's laboratory to the wider reaches of the homunculi coven. Above me, the stolen suns pulse with sickly light, creating shadows that seem to move with predatory intent. The architecture defies comprehension, spires and arches and walkways that intersect at impossible angles, creating vistas that hurt the mind to contemplate. The former human soldier has survived 3 sessions on my master's table. His resilience is remarkable. Where others would have broken entirely, he maintains some fragment of self, some kernel of defiance buried beneath layers of trauma and surgical modification. My master is pleased by this. Pleased subjects rarely remain intact for long. I carry samples of the soldier's altered tissues. My master has begun preliminary work to replicate the subject's unusual pain threshold in other specimens. The vials pulse with a faint bioluminescence, reactive to the ambient suffering that permeates the dark city. As I navigate the winding path, I pass other racks and servants. Some were human once, like me. Others were Eldar who fell from grace, their status stripped away as punishment for failure. We acknowledge each other with the briefest glances, careful not to show interest or sympathy. Such weaknesses are exploited ruthlessly here. The homunculi covens occupy the lowest levels of Komorrag, both physically and socially. Yet paradoxically, they wield immense power. The Dark Eldar fear true death above all else, for it means their souls are claimed by She Who Thirsts, the Chaos God born from their ancestors' depravity. Only the homunculi possess the knowledge to resurrect the fallen, to regrow bodies from scraps of flesh, to restore consciousness to those who have tasted oblivion. And so the proud archons and dracons, the succubi of the witch cults, the scourges with their grafted wings, all must pay homage to the twisted flesh crafters. They bring gifts, they offer favors, they promise anything to ensure that should they fall, they will return. I reach an intersection where the passage branches into multiple identical corridors. To the untrained eye, there is no difference between them. But I have learned to detect the subtle variations in the pulsing of the walls, the almost imperceptible shifts in air current that indicate which path leads where. I choose the third passage from the left, which will take me to the chambers of comparative anatomy, where my master conducts his broader research. As I walk, I sense a change in the ambient energy of the corridor. The hairs on the back of my neck rise. Something approaches. I press myself against the wall, head bowed, samples clutched tightly to my chest. Seconds later, a procession passes. Incubi warriors in their segmented armor, moving with lethal grace, their claves humming with potential energy. They escort a figure whose presence makes the very air seem to recoil. An Archon, a lord of the Dark Eldar. His armor is adorned with trophies taken from countless victims across untold worlds. His face is a mask of cruel beauty, features so perfect they become horrifying in their inhuman symmetry. Power emanates from him like heat from a furnace, distorting the reality around him. I do not look directly at him. To do so would be to invite his attention, and the attention of an Archon is rarely survivable. But from the corner of my eye, I glimpse something unexpected. The Archon's aura pulses with agitation, concern, perhaps even fear. The procession passes, and I remain motionless until they are well beyond sight. Then I continue my journey, curiosity kindling despite my better judgment. An Archon displaying anything resembling worry is unusual enough to note. Perhaps there are whispers of a power shift among the cabals, or rumors of a particularly ambitious real space raid. Either could affect my master's standing, and by extension, my own tenuous existence. I reach the chambers of comparative anatomy and discover a flurry of activity. Racks and flesh sculptors move with unusual haste, preserving specimens, securing data crystals, sealing chambers that normally remain open for ongoing experimentation. Something is happening. Something significant. I locate the senior rack, a being who was ancient before I arrived. Most of its original form has been replaced or enhanced, leaving only a vague suggestion of the Eldar it once was. Its name translates roughly to Keeper of Categorized Screams. I bring samples from the human military specimen, I announce, offering the vials. Master requests they be compared with the baseline established from the previous warrior caste subjects. The senior rack takes the vials without acknowledging my words, immediately placing them in a containment field. Its movements are efficient, but rushed. Is there instability in the Coven hierarchy? I ask, careful to keep my tone neutral, merely seeking information necessary for my duties. The senior rack pauses, multiple eyes focusing on me with sudden intensity. Your master has not informed you. I maintain perfect stillness, the rack equivalent of a shrug. Information flows according to need in the homunculi covens, and often withholding knowledge is simply another form of control. The disjunction approaches, the senior rack says, voice lowered despite the unlikelihood of being overheard. The real space raids have been accelerated, all cabals mobilize. The great houses call in favors from the covens. The disjunction, I have heard whispers of this phenomenon, a periodic instability in the webway network that sustains Komorrag. During these events, sections of the Dark City may become temporarily isolated, cut off from the whole. In a society that functions as an elaborate pyramid of predation, such isolation can prove fatal for those caught in vulnerable positions. When, I ask, overstepping my bounds with direct questioning. Soon. Days, perhaps. The seers of the dying sun cabal have read the patterns. The senior rack returns to its tasks. Your master will expect you back promptly. Do not linger. I take the dismissal as intended and begin the return journey. My mind calculates rapidly, considering implications. The disjunction means opportunity and danger in equal measure. Power vacuums will form in isolated sections. Alliances will shift. The strong will prey on the temporarily weakened, and those who position themselves correctly might ascend, while others fall. What does this mean for a rack like me? Little, directly. I am a tool, not a player in the great game of predation that defines Drukhari society. But my survival depends on my usefulness, and knowledge is always useful to those who possess the wisdom to apply it judiciously. I take a different route back to my master's laboratory. Not the most direct path, but one that passes near the edges of the Kabbalite districts, where whispers might be overheard. Information gathered now could prove valuable currency in the coming upheaval. The wider corridors of Komorrag teem with activity. Raiders prepare for expedition. Slaves are herded in greater numbers toward the waiting vessels. The air vibrates with anticipation, the dark Eldar energized by the prospect of violence and acquisition on a grand scale. I keep to the shadows, just another servant on assigned tasks, unremarkable, beneath notice. It is a survival skill I have perfected. As I pass a junction leading to one of the gladiatorial arenas, I notice unusual movement, not the typical flow of spectators or combatants, but a martial precision that suggests Kabbalite operations. Warriors in the colors of 3 different houses move in coordinated patterns, securing positions around the arena's perimeter. Curious. The arenas are typically neutral ground, controlled by the witch cults rather than the cabals. Their violation of this boundary suggests either unprecedented cooperation or the opening moves of internal conflict. I linger just long enough to observe the insignia of the primary cabal involved. The Poisoned Tongue, one of the most influential, led by Lady Maliz, a figure whose cunning is legendary even by Dark Eldar standards. If her forces move so openly, the coming disjunction must truly promise significant opportunity. A sharp pain lances through my modified nervous system. A reminder, my master calling me back. The connection between us is not telepathic but a crude approximation, a bioengineered leash that compels obedience through discomfort. I abandon my observations and hurry back toward the laboratory. The summons grows more insistent with each step delayed. By the time I reach the pulsing entrance to my master's domain, the pain has escalated to a persistent burn along my spine. Inside, I find not just my master but a gathering of homunculi. 3 ancient flesh crafters, each more grotesquely modified than the last, converse in tones too modulated for my enhanced hearing to fully capture. They speak an archaic dialect, deliberately obscuring their exchange from lesser ears. My master notices my return but gives no indication of approval or disapproval. He simply gestures for me to assume my position at the preparation station. I comply immediately, though my curiosity burns stronger than the subsiding pain of the summons. The human soldier remains on the central table, though his configuration has been significantly altered since my departure. His limbs have been removed and reattached in arrangements that defy conventional anatomy. His nervous system glows visibly beneath translucent skin. His eyes follow my movement, recognition still visible despite everything that has been done to him. One of the visiting homunculi approaches the subject, examining my master's work with a critical gaze. The pain threshold adaptations are impressive, the visitor acknowledges. Such resilience could prove useful for the specialized troops requested by the Archon of the Black Heart. My master inclines his head, accepting the rare compliment. The human military bloodlines occasionally produce exceptional specimens. This one has potential beyond mere entertainment. The human on the table makes a sound, a rattling in his reconstructed throat that might have been an attempt to speak. All eyes turn to him. It retains cognitive function despite the extensive modifications, another homunculus observes. Remarkable, my master gestures to me. Draven, demonstrate the subject's retained faculties. I approach the table, meeting the human's gaze. His eyes widen slightly. Does he recognize something of his own former humanity in me, or is he simply responding to a face he has seen before amid the nightmare of his existence here? Soldier, I address him, using Imperial Gothic. Recite your military designation and primary combat function. The human's reconstructed jaw works, muscle memory fighting against new configurations of bone and tissue. When he speaks, his voice emerges as a harmonic whisper, beautiful and horrifying. Sergeant Marcus Kell, 103rd Cadian Shock Troopers, heavy weapons specialist. One of the homunculi makes a sound of appreciation. Cognitive retention at this stage of modification is unusual. Your techniques have improved, brother. My master acknowledges this with a slight gesture. The subject's willpower serves our purposes. The stronger the mind, the more exquisite the breaking, and the more valuable the final result. The human, Sergeant Kell, focuses on me with sudden intensity. You are human, he rasps. You betrayed your species. The homunculi watch with clinical interest. This is another test, for both the subject and for me. I survived, I reply simply. As you are surviving, adaptation is not betrayal. It is evolution. Death would be better. Kell insists, though his reconstructed vocal apparatus makes the words sound like music rather than defiance. I lean closer, as if adjusting one of the monitoring devices attached to his exposed nervous system. Death is not an option they will grant you, I whisper, but neither is this state permanent. Adaptation opens possibilities, survival alone does not. I do not know why I say this. Perhaps some fragment of human empathy remains within me, despite everything. Perhaps I simply wish to observe how hope affects his physiological responses, data that might prove useful to my master. The human's eyes change, a flicker of something, understanding perhaps, or the beginning of the same terrible comprehension that transformed me from victim to tool. I straighten and step back, returning to my duties. The homunculi continue their discussion, planning how best to utilize the techniques demonstrated on Sergeant Kell for the coming raids. The disjunction will require specialized troops, warriors modified to withstand unusual environmental stresses or empowered to capture specific categories of slaves. As I prepare the instruments for the next phase of Experimentation. I consider what I have learned. The disjunction approaches. The Cabals prepare for unprecedented raids. The homunculi covens have been commissioned to provide specialized support, and somewhere in this tangled web of predation and power, perhaps there exists opportunity even for a lowly rack like me. Not freedom, never that, but perhaps advancement. Perhaps protection against the vicissitudes of fate in a city where cruelty is the only constant. I glance again at Sergeant Kell, at his eyes still burning with defiance despite his transformation. I recognize that fire. I had it once. Now I have something else. Something colder. Something that might, with careful cultivation, become power of a sort. In Cumorah, pain is currency and survival is salvation. Mercy is the one luxury no dark Eldar can afford. But knowledge, properly applied, can be a weapon as sharp as any blade. And I am learning. Always learning. The preparations for the coming disjunction have reached a fever pitch. The dark city vibrates with anticipation, a predator tensing before the leap. In my master's laboratory, we work without pause, modifying subjects according to specialized requirements from various cables. Today I assist with the final adjustments to Sergeant Kell. He has surpassed expectations, his human physiology accepting modifications that would kill lesser specimens. My master has decided that Kell will serve not as a mere experiment, but as a prototype for a new class of arena combatant, showcasing the Coven's innovative techniques to potential clients. Apply the neural accelerant, my master instructs, gesturing to a crystalline container of luminescent fluid. Precision is essential. Too much, and the cognitive functions we have preserved will be overwhelmed. Too little, and the combat reflexes will not achieve optimal enhancement. I prepare the injection assembly, a Baroque instrument of tubes and needles designed to deliver substances directly to specific regions of the brain. Kell watches me with eyes that have been replaced with multifaceted lenses, giving him enhanced visual acuity at the cost of constant, disorienting input. This will cause extreme discomfort. I inform him, a courtesy my master allows because he believes the anticipation of pain enhances its effect. Your perception of time will alter, sensory input will intensify, motor response will accelerate. Why tell me? Kell asks, his voice now a harmonic chorus produced by multiple vocal apparatus working in concert. Does it matter if I know? An interesting question. One that reveals his mind remains analytical despite everything done to him. Knowledge changes, experience. I reply, positioning the injection assembly against his exposed cerebral cortex. My master believes that understanding the purpose of pain gives it context that enhances its transformative properties. Your master, Kell says, the harmonics of his voice creating undertones of contempt. You speak of him with reverence, Stockholm Syndrome, or have you truly forgotten what it means to be human? The term he uses is unfamiliar to me, some cultural reference from his world perhaps, but the accusation behind it is clear enough. Humanity is a set of limitations I have transcended, I tell him, reciting a doctrine that has been carved into my flesh countless times. In Cumorah, there is only predator and prey. I chose not to remain prey. I activate the injection mechanism. Kell's body convulses as the neural accelerant floods his modified brain. His multifaceted eyes spin rapidly in their sockets, processing information at speeds no unmodified human could comprehend. His mouth opens in a silent scream, the harmonic vocals temporarily overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience. My master observes with clinical satisfaction. Excellent. The calibration appears optimal. Prepare him for transport to the arena. The demonstration is scheduled immediately following the Cabal. Council gathering. I work efficiently, disconnecting monitoring devices, securing specialized restraints designed to contain Kell's enhanced strength without damaging the modifications. As I work, I feel my master's attention shift to me. You have performed admirably throughout this project, Draven, he says, the rare praise immediately putting me on alert. Your understanding of both human baseline physiology and our more advanced techniques has proven valuable. I live to serve, Master. I respond automatically, the phrase a shield against whatever might follow. Indeed, my master's voice carries harmonics of amusement. Your adaptation has exceeded expectations. Originally, I had intended you merely as an interpreter of human responses, a translator of pain, but you have become something more, something worthy of investment. I remain silent, recognizing the danger in this conversation. In Komorog, attention is rarely beneficial, even when it appears positive. After the demonstration, we will begin a new phase of your modification, my master continues. Your service has earned you the privilege of advancement. Advancement. The word carries complex implications. It could mean genuine enhancement, elevated status, greater agency. Or it could mean more extensive alteration, deeper integration into my master's systems, further erosion of whatever remains of my original self. I am honored, Master, I reply, keeping my tone neutral despite the calculation racing through my mind. As you should be. Few of your kind progress beyond basic rack functionality. Fewer still earn the right to specialized enhancement. My master turns away, his attention returning to Kel. The arena awaits our creation. The Archons must be shown the value of our innovations before they commit their resources to our coven for the disjunction raids. I complete my preparations of Sergeant Kel. He watches me, his modified eyes cycling through different visual spectrums, analyzing me, on levels beyond normal human perception. You are afraid, he observes, voice barely audible, not of death, of change. I do not respond. Engaging with a subject outside the parameters set by my master could be interpreted as insubordination. I understand now, Kel continues, undeterred by my silence. What you meant by adaptation opening possibilities. You play a longer game. I adjust the final restraint, leaning close as if checking its security. There is no escape from Komorog, I whisper, but there are degrees of captivity, degrees of agency. Remember that in the arena. Before he can respond, the transport team arrives. Specialized servitors, themselves horrific amalgamations of flesh and machine, designed specifically for the secure movement of dangerous specimens. They take custody of Kel, their movements precise and unhurried. Attend me for the demonstration. My master instructs me, your familiarity with the subject will be useful should any adjustments be required before combat. Yes, Master. We depart the laboratory, joining the flow of Drukhari moving toward the gladiatorial sectors. The atmosphere in the corridors has changed since the announcement of the coming disjunction. There is an edge to the usual predatory awareness, a heightened sense of opportunity and danger intermixed. The arena awaits in one of the oldest sections of Komorra, a vast structure built around a fragment of some ancient civilization. The origin of the central pillar that forms the arena's core is unknown even to the oldest homunculi. Some claim it predates the fall of the Eldar. Others believe it was stolen from real space, from some Xenos empire long since exterminated. Whatever its source, it pulses with energies that amplify emotion, making it ideal for spectacles of violence and suffering. We enter through the preparation chambers, where other homunculi and their racks ready their own contributions to the day's entertainment. The competition between covens is perpetual and vicious. Each demonstration serves not only to impress potential Kabbalite clients, but to establish hierarchy among the flesh crafters themselves. My master is greeted with formal deference by lesser homunculi and with cautious acknowledgement by his peers. I remain a step behind him, head slightly bowed, the perfect image of the well-trained rack. But my enhanced senses catalog everything, gathering information that might prove useful. The preparation chamber opens onto a staging area overlooking the arena floor. From this vantage point, I can see the vast expanse of the combat space, surrounded by ascending tiers of spectator platforms. Dark Eldar of every caste fill the viewing areas, from lowly half-born to the exalted Archons in their private observation pods. The anticipation is palpable. In a society built on the consumption of extreme emotion, Spectacles like this are both entertainment and sustenance. The suffering of the combatants, the bloodlust of the victors, the despair of the defeated, all generate the psychic energy the Dark Eldar crave, the nourishment that staves off the soul thirst inflicted by she who thirsts. On the arena floor, the first combatants are already engaged. Unmodified slaves, freshly captured from real space, fight with primitive weapons against creatures I cannot fully identify. Xenos beasts, perhaps, or failed experiments released for disposal through entertainment, merely the prelude. My master notes dismissively, the appetizer before the true feast. A delegation approaches our position. Kabbalite warriors in the livery of the Black Heart, escorting a figure whose presence causes even my master to straighten perceptibly. An Archon, but not just any Archon. Even I, with my limited exposure to the higher echelons of Drukhari society, recognize the insignia of Asdrubal Vekt's inner circle. The Archon is accompanied by a Lamaean, one of the specialized courtesans trained in the arts of poison and seduction. She surveys our group with eyes that miss nothing, her beauty as lethal as any blade. Honored Homunculus, the Archon addresses my master. Supreme Overlord Vekt expresses interest in your latest innovations. The coming disjunction presents unique opportunities, and the Cabal of the Black Heart wishes to ensure its raids are supported by the finest specialized troops. My master inclines his head, acknowledging the compliment while evaluating its implications. Vekt's attention is a double-edged sword, offering both opportunity and scrutiny. We are prepared to demonstrate a prototype designed specifically for the environmental challenges anticipated during the disjunction, my master responds. A human military specimen, modified to function optimally in unstable real space conditions while retaining cognitive abilities useful for specialized acquisition tasks. The Archon's expression reveals nothing, but the Lamaean's lips curve in the slightest smile. We look forward to the demonstration. The Supreme Overlord values innovation, particularly when it serves his specific interests. They move on, continuing their circuit of the preparation area, evaluating the offerings of various covens. Once they are beyond hearing range, my master turns to me. The Blackheart's interest is significant. Vekt rarely shows his hand so openly. The coming disjunction must present unusual strategic value. I maintain my deferential posture but venture a question. Will Sergeant Kell's demonstration be against other modified subjects? No. That would be insufficient to demonstrate his full capabilities. My master's voice carries tones of anticipation. The Archon has provided specialized opponents, captured aspect warriors from the craft worlds. My surprise is genuine. Aspect warriors are elite fighters from the Eldari craft worlds, the cousins of the Dark Eldar who follow a disciplined path of warfare. They are rarely captured alive, and when they are, their value as subjects for experimentation is immense. How many? I ask. 3. Dire Avengers. Their combat abilities will provide an appropriate challenge to demonstrate Kell's enhancements. 3 against 1. Even with Kell's extensive modifications, the odds seem deliberately skewed against him. But perhaps that is the point, not to demonstrate victory, but to showcase specific capabilities even in defeat. A chime sounds, indicating the transition to the main demonstrations. The homunculi begin moving their specimens toward the deployment gates that will deliver them to the arena floor. My master gestures for me to follow him to our assigned position. Sergeant Kell waits in the holding chamber, his restraints still in place. His modified eyes cycle more rapidly now, processing the new environment, evaluating threats and opportunities. When he sees me, the cycling slows momentarily, focusing. The rules of engagement? He asks, his harmonic voice controlled despite the clear tension in his enhanced musculature. I look to my master for permission before responding. A slight nod grants it. Survival, I tell Kell. By any means necessary, your opponents are Eldari aspect warriors. Elites trained in the arts of warfare for centuries. They will attempt to kill you efficiently. Your enhancements give you advantages they will not anticipate, but they possess experience and training you cannot match. Objectives. An interesting question. Most subjects focus solely on survival or escape, not strategic goals. Demonstration of capabilities, my master interjects. Combat effectiveness, adaptability, tactical assessment. The duration of your survival is less relevant than the display of your functions. Kell absorbs this information, his modified brain processing it at accelerated speeds. And if I exceed expectations, my master makes a sound that might be amusement. Then your value increases, as does your utility. Perform well enough, and you may earn the right to further modification rather than dissection. The final preparations are complete, the restraints are removed, and Kell flexes his enhanced limbs, testing the neural connections, assessing his new capabilities. His movements are unnaturally fluid, almost predatory, the human awkwardness replaced by something more akin to the lethal grace of the Dark Eldar themselves. "It is time," my master announces. "Remember, Draven, observe carefully. Every reaction, every adaptation, every failure, all are data to be collected." "Yes, master." The deployment gate opens, revealing the arena floor below. Kell is guided to the platform that will deliver him to the combat area. Before he steps onto it, he pauses, looking back at me. "When this is done," he says, harmonics creating an unsettling depth to his words, "remember what you told me about degrees of captivity." Then he is gone, descending to meet his fate in the arena. My master and I move to our designated observation position, a suspended platform that offers an unobstructed view of the combat area. Other homunculi and their attendants occupy similar vantages, while the more exalted members of Drukhari society watch from luxurious private boxes adorned with trophies of conquest. The arena floor has been configured to simulate unstable environmental conditions. Sections rise and fall unpredictably. Energies similar to those of an unstable webway portal flicker at random intervals. Visibility shifts as localized atmospheric disturbances create pockets of darkness and illumination. Perfect conditions to showcase Kell's modifications. He emerges from the deployment gate, immediately scanning his surroundings. His movements are measured, conserving energy, assessing. From another gate, his opponents appear. 3 dire avengers, their armor a blue so deep it seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their weapons the deadly shuriken catapults that can fire hundreds of molecularly edged discs in seconds. The aspect warriors move. With the practiced coordination of centuries of training, they spread out, establishing firing positions that offer maximum coverage with minimal exposure. They communicate through subtle gestures, a battlefield language evolved over millennia of warfare. Kell observes them, his modified eyes cycling through spectrums, analyzing. Then he moves. His speed is shocking, not the fluid grace of the Eldar, but a brutal, efficient velocity that carries him from cover to cover faster than unaugmented human reflexes could track. The aspect warriors adjust instantly, their weapons tracking, firing streams of shuriken that slice through the space Kell occupied milliseconds before. The neural accelerant is performing optimally, my master notes with satisfaction. Observe how he processes environmental data and threat assessment simultaneously. Indeed, Kell does not simply react to the aspect warriors. He anticipates the unstable terrain, using the sudden shifts in the arena floor to disrupt his opponent's firing solutions. A section rises unexpectedly, and he rides it upward, gaining momentary height advantage before dropping behind a dire avenger who had advanced to establish a new firing position. The close quarters engagement is brief but brutal. Kell's enhanced strength and speed allow him to grapple the aspect warrior before the Eldar can bring his weapon to bear. There is a wet cracking sound as augmented hands crush the elegant armor, breaking the bones beneath. The audience reacts with a collective intake of breath. First blood to the modified human, against all expectations. The remaining dire avengers adjust their strategy immediately. They maintain distance, using their superior ranged weapons to pin Kell down, forcing him to remain in cover as shurikens slice the air around him. Phase 2 capabilities, my master says. activating a remote control sequence. Kell convulses briefly as secondary modifications activate. The reinforced spinal column we installed glows with bioluminescent energy. His muscle density visibly increases, fibers tightening beneath translucent skin. And then he does something unexpected. Instead of attacking the aspect warriors directly, he turns his attention to the arena itself. With enhanced strength, he tears a section of the unstable terrain free, creating improvised weaponry from the environment. Tactical adaptation, my master notes approvingly, cognitive functions performing beyond baseline projections. Kell hurls the torn section of flooring with calculated precision, not at the aspect warriors, who would easily evade such a crude attack, but at the environmental control node regulating the unstable energies. The impact disrupts the carefully calibrated systems, causing a cascade of unplanned fluctuations. Darkness engulfs sections of the arena as power fluctuates. The aspect warriors adjust, their helmets compensating for the visual interference. But Kell has gained something more valuable than concealment: distraction. In the momentary readjustment, he closes distance again, this time attacking both remaining dire Avengers simultaneously. His movements are no longer merely fast but preternaturally coordinated, each limb operating almost independently yet in perfect concert. One aspect warrior falls, neck broken by a precisely calculated strike that finds the minute gap between helmet and torso armor. The last dire Avenger retreats, switching tactics, drawing a power blade for close quarters defense. The duel that follows draws appreciative murmurs even from the Archons. The aspect warrior's centuries of training manifest in flawless form, each strike and parry executed with textbook precision. Kell counters with raw efficiency, his enhanced nervous system processing combat data and adapting in real time. Blood flows from both combatants. The dire Avenger's blade finds gaps in Kell's modified form, slicing through enhanced muscle and reinforced bone. But Kell seems not to register the damage, his pain response completely overridden by the neural modifications we installed. Remarkable pain suppression. Comments a visiting homunculus from a neighboring observation platform. Is cognitive function maintained at full capacity despite severe tissue damage? Enhanced even, my master responds with professional pride. The neural pathways we installed utilize pain as additional processing power. The more damage he sustains, the more efficiently his combat analysis functions operate. The end comes suddenly. The dire Avenger executes a flawless killing strike, a move that would decapitate any normal opponent, but Kell is no longer normal. The flexible spinal reinforcement we installed allows his head to bend at an impossible angle, evading the lethal edge by millimeters. In the same motion, his hands lock onto the aspect warrior's arms, and with a savage application of enhanced strength, he tears them from their sockets. The arena falls silent as the last opponent collapses. Kell stands amid the carnage, bleeding from dozens of wounds, portions of his modified anatomy exposed to open air, yet still functional. His breathing is controlled, his posture alert. Waiting. Complete success, my master announces, loud enough for neighboring observers to hear. Combat capability against elite opponents confirmed. Environmental adaptation optimal. Cognitive function maintained throughout extreme stress conditions. The audience responds with the Dark Eldar equivalent of approval. Not applause, but a predatory intensity, an acknowledgement of worthy prey, of potential value. The Archon from Vekt's inner circle approaches our observation platform, the Lamaean still at his side. Impressive, the Archon acknowledges, particularly the adaptive tactics. Not mere brutality but calculation, useful for specialized acquisition during the disjunction. The Supreme Overlord has specific targets in mind? My master inquires, voice carefully modulated to show neither too much interest nor too little. The disjunction will create temporary accessibility to certain protected systems, the Archon replies obliquely. Assets previously beyond reach may become temporarily vulnerable, assets requiring specific handling. My master inclines his head in understanding. We can produce a limited number of similarly enhanced operatives before the disjunction manifests. Each can be calibrated for specific environmental conditions or target parameters. See that you do, the Archon says, the casual words carrying the weight of command from Vect himself. The Cabal of the Black Heart will ensure your coven receives appropriate compensation and protection during the transitional instabilities. Protection. The word catches my attention more than compensation. The Archon is offering security during the coming disruptions, a commodity perhaps more valuable than any payment in a city about to experience structural upheaval. As the Archon departs, my master turns to me. Retrieve the specimen. Full biometric documentation required before regeneration procedures. Master. I descend to the arena floor, accompanied by recovery servitors programmed to secure potentially dangerous subjects. Kell remains where he stood at the combat's conclusion, still alert despite his injuries. His modified eyes track my approach, cycling through assessment patterns. You performed beyond expected parameters. I inform him as the servitors move to secure him. Your demonstration has secured valuable contracts for the Coven. And my reward? Kell asks, voice harmonics strained by damage to some of his vocal modifications. Continued existence, I reply simply. Further enhancement rather than dissection, utility rather than entertainment. A harsh bargain by human standards. By Comorag standards, exceptional generosity. Kell allows the servitors to secure him without resistance. As they prepare him for transport back to the laboratory, he speaks again, voice lowered. Your master values you, uses you to communicate with his specimens because you understand both sides. That makes you valuable, that makes you dangerous. I do not respond. The observation is accurate, but stating it aloud is perilous, even here amid the arena noise. When the disjunction comes, Kell continues, everything changes, remember that. The servitors complete their restraint protocols, and we begin the journey back to my master's laboratory. Throughout the dark city, I sense the ripples of response to the demonstration. Whispers follow us. Evaluations. Recalculations of power and position based on the unexpected alliance between my master's coven and Vect's inner circle. The disjunction approaches. Change approaches with it. And in Comorag, change is always dangerous, always painful, and occasionally, very rarely, opportunity disguised as catastrophe. I think of Kell's words. When the disjunction comes, everything changes. Perhaps even the immutable hierarchies of the Dark City itself. The chronometers in my master's laboratory measure time in real space equivalencies, a concession to the practical requirements of managing biological processes. By their reckoning, 3 standard Terran weeks have passed since Sergeant Kell's demonstration in the arena, 3 weeks of feverish preparation throughout Comorag, 3 weeks of escalating anticipation as the disjunction draws nearer. My duties have expanded significantly. My master now utilizes me not merely as a laboratory assistant, but as an intermediary with the human specimens being modified for the coming raids. My understanding of both human psychology and Dark Eldar methodology makes me uniquely suited to prepare the subjects mentally for their transformation. Today I oversee the final calibration of 6 enhanced humans, each modified according to the specific requirements provided by the Cabal of the Black Heart. They wait in specialized containment chambers, their bodies altered beyond recognition, their minds carefully balanced between obedience and initiative. Sergeant Kell has become the template for this new generation of specialized acquisition units. His success in the arena proved the viability of extensive modification while preserving tactical acumen. Each of these new subjects has been enhanced following the protocols established with Kell, with variations tailored to specific environmental conditions or target parameters. The neural accelerant distribution requires adjustment in Subject 4. I inform the technical rack overseeing the calibration. Cognitive response shows a 0.37 delay in processing visual data from the peripheral spectrum modifications. The technical rack makes the correction without comment. My authority in these matters is now established. another subtle change in status following the arena demonstration. My master enters the calibration chamber, accompanied by 2 lesser homunculi assigned to assist with the specialized project. They confer in their archaic dialect, but I have been authorized to understand portions of their exchange, another mark of my elevated position. The Archon's parameters for the ocular modifications seem unnecessarily specific, one assistant comments. The wavelength sensitivity exceeds standard requirements for general acquisition operations. The targets are highly specialized, my master responds. The wavelength calibration allows detection of specific energy signatures associated with Eldari technology of pre-fall origin. The disjunction will expose artifacts previously shielded by webway distortions. Artifacts of pre-fall origin. The implications are significant. Before their fall to depravity created Slaanesh and shattered their civilization, the Eldari created technology that approached the miraculous. Most was lost in the cataclysm, but pieces survive, jealously guarded by the craft worlds or hidden in forgotten corners of the webway. Such artifacts would be valuable beyond measure and dangerous beyond comprehension. The Kabbalite representatives will arrive within the hour to inspect the final products, my master announces. Draven, ensure the specimens are presentable and responsive. Their cognitive functions must demonstrate both compliance and initiative. The acquisition targets will require complex problem-solving under unpredictable conditions. Yes, master. As the homunculi withdraw to prepare for the inspection, I move among the containment chambers, conducting final evaluations of each subject. They watch me with their modified eyes, each set calibrated for different spectral sensitivities. Some recognize me as a former human, others have been altered so extensively that such distinctions no longer register. I pause before Kel's chamber. His modifications have been refined since the arena demonstration, optimized based on combat performance data. He has healed from the damage inflicted by the dire Avengers, though healed is perhaps not the correct term. Rebuilt. Improved. The weaknesses exposed in combat have been systematically eliminated. Final cognitive evaluation, I announce, activating the communication system to his chamber. Scenario simulation will commence in 30 seconds. Kel inclines his head in acknowledgement. His movements are more fluid now, the integration of artificial enhancements with original physiology more seamless. He has adapted to his modifications faster than any previous subject, embracing transformation where others resist until their minds fracture. The simulation begins, hololithic projectors creating illusory environments populated with potential targets and threats. Kel navigates the scenario with exceptional efficiency, making correct acquisition decisions without hesitation, neutralizing obstacles with precisely calculated force, preserving targets with care that would seem incongruous with his lethal capabilities. Simulation complete, I announce as the hololithic imagery fades. Performance exceeds required parameters. Kel approaches the transparent barrier separating us. The disjunction, he says, voice now a perfect harmonic blend that carries subtle overtones audible only to modified hearing. It comes soon, not a question. An assessment, yes. You have prepared for it, he observes. Again, not a question. I consider my response carefully. The surveillance systems in the laboratory record everything, but my master has granted me limited discretionary communication with the specimens to facilitate optimal psychological conditioning. All of Komorok prepares, I reply neutrally. The disjunction creates both opportunity and vulnerability. And you, Draven? Which do you anticipate? A dangerous question, one that probes at loyalties and ambitions that should not exist in Iraq. I anticipate service to my master's interests, I answer, the expected response. Then, lower, subharmonics that might be missed by standard monitoring and adaptation to changing circumstances. Kel's modified eyes cycle through assessment patterns. The others, he indicates the neighboring containment chambers with a slight gesture. They were like me once, soldiers. Yes, military specimens produce superior results for these modifications. Existing combat training provides foundation architecture for the neural enhancements. And they understand what awaits them? They understand what is necessary. What awaits them is deployment during the disjunction. They will lead specialized raiding parties into sections of the webway normally inaccessible, seeking specific artifacts identified by Vect's inner circle. Their modifications will allow them to function in environments hostile to standard Drukhari physiology and to identify targets that would be invisible to unaugmented perception. Whether they will survive these operations is another question entirely. One I do not address, and Kel does not ask. The laboratory alert system chimes, indicating the arrival of the Kabbalite delegation. I complete my circuit of the containment chambers, making final adjustments to ensure optimal presentation, then assume my position at my master's side as the visitors enter. The Archon from Vect's inner circle leads the delegation, accompanied by the same Lamaean as before and a complement of Kabbalite trueborn, elite warriors born of natural birth rather than grown in the cloning vats that produce most Dark Eldar soldiers. Their presence signifies the importance Vect places on this project. Honored guests, my master greets them with formal deference. The specialized acquisition units are complete and calibrated to the precise specifications provided. Would you care to observe a demonstration of their capabilities? The Archon makes a gesture of assent. Show me the primary unit first, the one that performed in the arena. My master signals me to activate Kel's chamber for demonstration. The transparent barrier recedes, and Kel steps forward, moving with lethal precision, every motion controlled and efficient. Impressive physical integration, the Archon observes. The crude human form almost appears elegant now. The modifications extend far beyond mere aesthetics, my master assures him. Specialized sensory apparatus calibrated to detect the energy signatures provided in your specifications. Enhanced strength and reaction time for operation in gravitationally unstable environments. Cognitive functions optimized for complex problem solving while maintaining absolute loyalty to mission parameters. The Archon circles Kel, studying the modifications with the eye of a connoisseur. The Lamaean remains slightly behind, her attention seemingly elsewhere but missing nothing. The loyalty protocols interest me most, the Archon says. How does one ensure obedience in a creature modified for independent action and problem solving? Multiple redundant systems, my master explains. Neural limiters prevent direct action against Drukhari controllers. Pain response conditioning reinforces compliance. And perhaps most importantly, psychological conditioning administered by my specialized rack, Draven, who understands the human baseline mentality and can shape it toward our requirements. The Archon's gaze shifts to me, evaluating. This one was human also? Indeed. One of my more successful long-term projects. Proof that with proper application of technique, even the crude material of humanity can be elevated to useful function. The Lamaean speaks for the first time, her voice melodic and venomous simultaneously. It maintains traces of its original appearance, an interesting choice. Deliberate, my master confirms, its transitional state makes it more effective in conditioning new specimens. They respond to the visual cue of a being that has successfully adapted to transformation. The Archon returns his attention to Kel. The Supreme Overlord has identified 7 primary acquisition targets that will become accessible during the disjunction. Each requires specialized handling and presents unique environmental challenges. These units will deploy with elite Kabbalite teams, providing target identification and extraction capabilities that our warriors lack. They are ready, my master assures him. Each unit calibrated for specific target parameters. Good. The Archon makes a gesture, and one of the Trueborn steps forward, presenting a data crystal. Final mission parameters. To be integrated immediately, the disjunction manifests within 20 real space hours. 20 hours, sooner than anticipated. The disjunction's approach had been calculated within a general time frame, but precise prediction was thought impossible. That Vect possesses such specific knowledge suggests information sources beyond those available to even the highest homunculi. My master accepts the data crystal with appropriate ceremony. It shall be done. The units will be ready for deployment on your command. The inspection continues, each modified human demonstrated and evaluated. The Archon appears satisfied, though satisfaction in a dark Eldar of his rank manifests as an absence of criticism rather than explicit approval. When the delegation departs, the atmosphere in the laboratory shifts subtly, tension replaced by focused purpose. Draven, my master addresses me. Complete the final conditioning of all units, integrate the mission parameters from the data crystal, ensure absolute compliance functionality. Yes, master. I accept the crystal, a rare honor that indicates the trust placed in me for this project. As I move to execute my instructions, my master adds, "Your performance throughout this project has been exemplary. Your advancement continues to justify the resources invested in your development." I exist to serve, master. The ritual response, offered with perfect deference. Indeed. And after the disjunction, we shall discuss the next phase of your modification. Your unique position between human understanding and Drukhari methodology has proven more valuable than anticipated. I bow acknowledgement, concealing the calculations this statement provokes. The next phase of modification could mean many things: greater autonomy, specialized function, or deeper integration into the homunculi systems, further erosion of whatever remains of my original identity. The disjunction approaches, 20 hours until everything changes, until portions of Komorog become temporarily isolated, until protected sections of the webway become briefly accessible, until the careful balance of power in the Dark City faces disruption. 20 hours to prepare, to calculate, to position myself for whatever comes after. I begin with Sergeant Kell, connecting the data crystal to his containment chamber's interface, initiating the integration of the mission parameters. His modified eyes watch me, assessment patterns cycling. The time approaches, he says, subharmonics pitched for my enhanced hearing alone. Yes, I confirm, equally discreet. Final preparations only. Your master values you highly. Value is conditional in Komorra. As is loyalty, Kell observes. I make no response to this dangerous observation, focusing on the technical aspects of the parameter integration. The data flows into Kell's neural system, maps of webway configurations, energy signature identifiers, extraction protocols. These targets, Kell says after absorbing the information, they are not simple artifacts. I pause, listening. The energy signatures match theoretical patterns for temporal distortion technology, pre-fall Eldari devices for manipulating localized time streams. Such technology would be valuable beyond measure to the Dark Eldar, who exist in a state of perpetual deterioration as Slanesh constantly drains their souls. The ability to manipulate time could create sanctuaries where that drain might be slowed or temporarily halted. The mission parameters are not my concern, I say aloud for any monitoring systems, then in subharmonics, but such technology is inherently unstable. The fall occurred partly because of such experimentation. Precisely, Kell responds in kind, which makes the disjunction timing suspect. What if it is not a natural phenomenon but a calculated manipulation? The implication is staggering. If the disjunction is not a random fluctuation in the webway but an engineered event, it suggests powers at work beyond even Vect's machinations. I complete the parameter integration and move to the next specimen, thoughts racing behind a mask of perfect obedience. 20 hours until the disjunction, 20 hours until deployment, 20 hours until everything changes, and perhaps 20 hours to prepare for possibilities beyond those my master anticipates. The countdown to the disjunction has begun. The final hours before the disjunction unfold with meticulous precision. The modified acquisition units are prepared for deployment, each receiving final calibrations and mission briefings. Throughout Komorog, Similar preparations occur across countless cabals and covens. The Dark City vibrates with predatory anticipation. I oversee the loading of specialized equipment onto the transport vehicles that will carry the acquisition units to their deployment zones. Each piece has been designed to function under the specific environmental conditions predicted at the target locations. Gravitational stabilizers, temporal dampening fields, energy signature detectors calibrated to identify the ancient technologies hidden within the temporarily accessible regions of the webway. My master coordinates with other homunculi, establishing hierarchies of responsibility and credit for the coming operations. In Drukhari society, success must be claimed and attributed with the same precision as the technical preparations themselves. Glory and advancement flow to those who position themselves correctly before events unfold. As I work, I maintain constant awareness of my surroundings. The laboratory has become a nexus of activity, with representatives from aligned covens and cabals moving through regularly, exchanging information, making final adjustments to agreements and alliances. In this environment of controlled chaos, opportunities arise. Conversations can be overheard, data glimpsed, patterns recognized. I learn that the disjunction will not affect all of Komorog equally. Some regions will experience complete isolation, cut off from the wider Dark City for the duration. Others will maintain connections but experience dimensional instabilities, making travel hazardous but not impossible. And some will gain temporary connections to sections of the webway normally inaccessible, pathways to treasures long thought beyond reach. The Cabal of the Black Heart has mapped these effects with suspicious precision. Their preparations target 7 specific locations where the temporal distortion technologies are believed to be hidden. Each acquisition unit has been assigned to one of these locations, accompanied by elite Kabbalite strike teams. Sergeant Kell has been assigned the most challenging target, a section of the webway that legend claims contains a working prototype of a device called the Terminus Horologe, a mechanism that supposedly creates a bubble of altered time flow where seconds stretch to years or compress to milliseconds. Such technology would be transformative for the Dark Eldar. Their eternal thirst for souls, their constant need to inflict suffering to stave off Slanesh's draw on their essence, might be manipulated through controlled time distortion. Areas of accelerated time could be used to farm suffering more efficiently. Zones of slowed time could extend the nourishment derived from particularly valuable captives. As I load the final pieces of equipment, Kell is brought to the deployment bay. His containment unit is more elaborate than the others, equipped with additional stabilization fields and monitoring systems. His mission carries the highest priority and the greatest risk. Final equipment check, I announce, approaching his containment unit. The Kabbalite guards assigned to transfer him to the deployment zone stand nearby, their attention momentarily focused on coordination communications from their superiors. Kell watches me through the transparent barrier, his modified eyes cycling through assessment patterns that now seem almost familiar to me. We have worked closely throughout the preparation phase, his unique cognitive adaptations making him more partner than subject in the complex calibrations. All systems optimal, he confirms, subharmonics pitched for my hearing alone. But the temporal stabilizers are calibrated incorrectly for the target parameters. I check the readouts, outwardly performing standard verification. Explain, I respond in matching subharmonics. The settings assume standard temporal flow variations, but the target location, based on the energy signature profiles, will experience exponential rather than linear distortions. The stabilizers will fail catastrophically under those conditions. I verify his assessment against the theoretical models included in the mission parameters. He is correct, the calibration is wrong. But is it error or deliberate sabotage? Recalibrating, I announce aloud, making adjustments to the equipment settings. The changes are subtle but critical. The difference between functionality and failure under extreme conditions. The disjunction, Kell continues in subharmonics as I work. It begins already in the outer regions. reports of isolation and instability in the westward sectors. This is not information he should have access to. His containment unit is supposed to be information secure, except for direct mission parameters. How do you know this? I ask, keeping my visible actions focused on the equipment calibration. The neural interface for the mission parameters allows limited access to the deployment coordination network. I have been monitoring communications. Impressive and concerning. If Kel can access the network, his neural limiters may not be functioning as designed. He should be incapable of actions not directly aligned with mission objectives. The disjunction is not natural, Kel adds. The pattern progression matches theoretical models for induced webway destabilization. Someone is causing this. The implications are staggering. The disjunction has been assumed to be a natural phenomenon, a periodic instability in the ancient webway network that sustains Komorog. If it is artificially induced, it suggests a level of technological control over the webway that should not exist outside the most ancient and powerful entities in the galaxy. Calibration complete, I announce for the benefit of the Kabbalite guards who have returned their attention to us. The unit is prepared for deployment. One of the guards approaches, inspecting the containment unit. Transfer to primary deployment bay will commence immediately. Final coordination with strike team leaders in progress. I acknowledge the instruction and complete the documentation of the equipment preparation. As the guards prepare to move Kel's containment unit, he speaks once more in carefully modulated subharmonics. When everything changes, remember where you came from and what you have become. Before I can decipher this cryptic message, the guards activate the containment unit's transport mode, and Kel is taken from the preparation area toward the primary deployment bay. I remain behind, continuing my assigned tasks, but my thoughts race with calculations and possibilities. If the disjunction is artificially induced, who benefits most from the specific pattern of isolations and connections it creates? The obvious answer is Vect and the Cabal of the Black Heart, who have demonstrated suspiciously detailed knowledge of the effects and locations of interest. But even Vect should not possess technology capable of manipulating the webway on this scale, unless that is precisely what he seeks to acquire through these raids. Not just temporal distortion devices, but components of a larger system for webway manipulation. Pieces of a technology that, if assembled, would give its possessor unprecedented control over Komorog itself, which exists entirely within the webway network. My speculations are interrupted by a summons from my master. I proceed immediately to his private chamber, a rarely accessed sanctum where his most valuable and dangerous research is conducted. The fact that I am permitted entry is yet another sign of my elevated status. Inside, I find my master engaged with complex hololithic projections displaying the structure of the webway surrounding Komorog. Points of light indicate the locations targeted for the acquisition raids, each pulsing with data about predicted disjunction effects. Draven, my master acknowledges my arrival without looking away from the projections. The final preparations are complete? Yes, master. All units deployed or in final transition to deployment zones. Good. He manipulates the projection, focusing on one particular target location, the one assigned to Kel. This location presents unique challenges. The temporal distortions are predicted to be exceptionally severe. The acquisition unit may not survive, regardless of modifications. The unit is aware of the probability, I confirm. Its programming prioritizes acquisition over self-preservation. My master makes a sound that might be amusement. Programming. Such a limited concept for what we have created. These units, particularly the primary specimen, have evolved beyond simple programming. They have become something more interesting, more useful. I remain silent, waiting for him to continue. The Archon believes these units are tools, created to specification and discarded after use, my master says. He does not understand the true value of adaptive consciousness combined with specialized modification. These units are prototypes for something far more significant. I venture. More than servants. potential vessels, the implication becomes clear. The homunculi are masters of resurrection, capable of rebuilding their own bodies from scraps of tissue after death. But the process is imperfect, requiring extensive resources and leaving the resurrected vulnerable for a period of recovery. These modified humans, with their enhanced neural capacity and adaptability, could potentially serve as temporary vessels for a homunculus's consciousness during the vulnerable period of resurrection. Not mere servants, but backup bodies. The neural modifications were designed with this compatibility in mind, I observe. Precisely, the Cabal of the Black Heart provides us the opportunity and resources to develop these prototypes under the guise of specialized raid units. After the disjunction, regardless of the raid outcomes, we will possess the data necessary to refine the process. My master turns from the projections to face me directly. Your role in this development has been crucial, Draven. Your understanding of both human cognitive baselines and our more advanced techniques has accelerated the research considerably. I am honored to serve, Master. Indeed, and after the disjunction, your service will enter a new phase. He gestures to a secondary hololithic projection, one I had not noticed immediately. It displays a complex neural structure that seems familiar somehow. This is a mapping of your current neural configuration, significantly enhanced from your original human template, yet retaining certain essential characteristics that make you valuable as an intermediary. I study the projection, recognizing my own modified brain structure. The enhancements are substantial, far more extensive than I had realized, yet as my master noted, key elements of human cognitive architecture remain intact. The next phase of your modification will preserve these elements while dramatically expanding your capabilities, my master continues. You will become the prototype for a new class of overseer, not merely an intermediary with the human specimens, but a controller for multiple acquisition units simultaneously, a force multiplier for future operations. An honor beyond expectation, Master. The expected response, delivered with perfect deference. Indeed, though not without risk. The neural integration required is experimental. Success is probable but not certain. Translation: I will be the test subject for a dangerous procedure that may destroy my mind entirely. But if successful, I will gain significantly expanded capabilities and status. A calculated gamble, typical of homunculi advancement. I exist to serve the Coven's advancement, Master. Well said. My master returns his attention to the primary projections. The disjunction progresses according to predictions. Deployment of all acquisition units should complete before peak instability is reached. Then we wait for the results. And if the units fail to acquire their targets, then we will have valuable data on the limitations of our modifications under extreme conditions. And the Cabal of the Black Heart will bear the cost of the failed raids. My master's tone suggests this outcome has been calculated as well. The homunculi covens win regardless of the raid results. Knowledge is our primary currency, not artifacts. A chime sounds, indicating an incoming communication. My master activates the receiver, and a hololithic representation of a Kabbalite commander appears. Honored homunculus, the commander begins formally. Deployment of acquisition units to targets 1 through 5 is complete. Units 6 and 7 are in transit to final positions. Initial environmental readings match predictions. Temporal distortions at target locations are within acceptable parameters for the modified units. Excellent, my master responds. Continue according to established protocols. Report any significant deviations immediately. The commander acknowledges, and the communication ends. My master returns to studying the projections, making minute adjustments to certain calculations. You are dismissed, Draven. Monitor the recovery preparations for the acquisition units. When they return, they will require immediate attention to preserve both their physical integrity and the valuable data they will have accumulated during exposure to the target environments. Master, I withdraw from the private chamber, thoughts carefully controlled. The information I have gained is valuable but dangerous. my master's plans for my future advancement, the true purpose of the modified humans as potential vessels, the artificial nature of the disjunction itself. Knowledge is power in Komorog, but knowledge openly displayed is vulnerability. I proceed to the recovery chambers, where specialized equipment has been prepared to receive the acquisition units upon their return from the raids. Each station contains customized regeneration tanks, neural stabilizers, and data extraction apparatus. My task is to ensure all systems are functioning optimally, ready to preserve both the physical specimens and the invaluable information they will have gathered. As I work, I maintain awareness of the chronometers measuring the progression of the disjunction. By all calculations, the phenomenon should reach peak instability within 3 hours. The acquisition raids are timed to coincide with this peak, when the targeted sections of the webway will be most accessible. The laboratory communication system chimes, indicating an incoming alert. I access the nearest terminal. Disjunction progression accelerating beyond predicted parameters, the automated system announces. Temporal distortion readings from outer sectors exceeding established baselines by factor of 3.7, recalibration of deployment timetables recommended. Accelerating beyond predictions. This confirms Kell's assessment that the disjunction is artificially induced. Natural phenomena follow established patterns. Only controlled systems can accelerate unexpectedly. I continue my preparations while monitoring the alert updates. Throughout the laboratory complex, I sense a shift in activity, increased urgency. Contingency protocols activated. The homunculi adapt quickly to changing circumstances, their ancient intellects processing deviations and calculating new approaches with inhuman speed. 2 hours pass. The disjunction continues to accelerate beyond predictions. Communications from the deployed acquisition units become sporadic, affected by the increasing instability in the webway. From the fragments that reach us, I learn that the environmental conditions at the target locations are significantly more extreme than anticipated. The temporal distortions in particular have surpassed the protective capacity of the equipment provided. I am summoned again, this time to the primary monitoring chamber where my master and several other senior homunculi track the progression of the raids. The atmosphere is tense even by Drukhari standards. Unit 3 has failed, one homunculus announces as I enter. Complete neural collapse following exposure to localized time dilation exceeding modifications tolerance. No acquisition confirmed. Unit 5 reports successful target identification but extraction impossible due to gravitational anomalies. Another adds, unit condition deteriorating rapidly. My master notices my arrival. Draven, what is the status of the recovery chambers? Fully prepared, master. All systems optimized for maximum data preservation, regardless of physical condition of returning units. Adjust the neural stabilizers to compensate for extreme temporal exposure, he instructs. Based on these readings, all surviving units will experience significant chronological desynchronization. I acknowledge the instruction and move to implement the adjustments when a priority alert sounds throughout the monitoring chamber. All attention turns to the main display, which shows a cascading failure of webway structures surrounding Komorog. The disjunction has exceeded all historical parameters. The senior technical homunculus announces, sections of the Dark City are experiencing complete dimensional phasing, others report localized reality inversion. The pattern suggests deliberate manipulation rather than natural instability. My master exchanges significant glances with his peers. The confirmation of artificial causation changes the strategic calculation entirely. The Archon knew, one homunculus hisses. The Black Heart Cabal anticipated these effects precisely. Their preparations were too specific, too targeted. The acquisition raids are not merely for artifact retrieval, my master concludes. They are positioned to stabilize key junctions in the webway network. The targets are not simply valuable technology, they are control nodes. The implications crystallize in my understanding. Vect is not simply taking advantage of the disjunction, he is causing it. And the true purpose is not to acquire temporal technology, but to establish control over the webway structure that sustains Comorai itself. A power play of unprecedented scale. "What of our acquisition units?" asks a younger homunculus. "If the raids are cover for webway manipulation, are our specimens expendable diversions?" "All resources are ultimately expendable," my master responds coolly, "but knowledge is never wasted. Whatever the Archon's true purpose, our units will provide valuable data on operating in manipulated temporal conditions. Data that may prove crucial in the new configuration of power that emerges from this disjunction." Another alert sounds, this one specifically tied to Kel's mission. Unit 1 reports successful target acquisition, the monitoring homunculus announces with surprise. Temporal device secured and extraction in progress. However, environmental conditions are deteriorating rapidly. Estimated survival probability for the unit is below 15%. All attention shifts to the incoming data stream from Kel's neural link. The information is fragmented, distorted by the extreme conditions at the target location, but enough comes through to confirm that he has indeed secured the terminus horologe or something very like it. "Remarkable," my master comments. "The modifications exceeded expectations. Even with the accelerated temporal distortions, the unit maintained functionality long enough to complete its primary objective." "Incoming transmission from Unit 1, the monitor announces. "Audio only, significant degradation." Kel's voice emerges from the communication system, distorted and fluctuating in pitch as if he is experiencing time at varying rates. "Device secured," he reports, "but temporal effects expanding beyond containment. The technology is not passive. It is actively manipulating the surrounding webway structure. This is not coincidental. The device was waiting to be activated." The senior homunculi exchange alarmed glances. Technology that awaits activation suggests pre-programming. Intention set in motion millennia ago and only now coming to fruition. "Can you disable the device?" my master asks. "Negative," Kel responds, his voice shifting between normal speed and unnaturally slow drawn-out syllables. "The activation sequence is progressing according to established parameters. This is its purpose. The disjunction is not a random event. It is the culmination of a process initiated during the fall. The fall. The cataclysmic collapse of the ancient Eldari Empire that created Slaanesh and shattered their civilization. If this technology dates from that era and was programmed to activate now, after all these millennia, it suggests a level of foresight and planning almost incomprehensible in scope. The webway restructures," Kel continues, "not random instability, but deliberate reconfiguration, new connections forming, old ones severing permanently. Return with the device immediately," my master orders. "Priority override on all other considerations." "Too late," Kel responds, his voice now unnaturally accelerated. Temporal bubble expanding, experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously. "The device is not a tool, it is a key. It does not manipulate time. It unlocks pathways closed since the fall." The communication degrades further, becoming unintelligible before cutting out entirely. The monitoring systems show a massive surge of energy at Kel's location, then nothing, complete sensor failure. For several moments, silence reigns in the monitoring chamber. The homunculi process what they have learned, calculating implications, adjusting strategies. I remain perfectly still, awaiting instructions while my own thoughts race with possibilities. The disjunction is not a natural phenomenon but the culmination of a plan set in motion at the time of the fall. The temporal technology is not the target but the trigger for a fundamental restructuring of the webway. And Vect somehow knew, positioning his forces to take advantage of changes that will reshape Comorai itself. "The recovery chambers," my master addresses me, breaking the silence. "Prepare for emergency protocols. If any units return, their data is priority. Physical preservation is secondary." "Yes, master." As I turn to leave, a new alert sounds, this one indicating a security breach in the laboratory complex itself. The monitoring displays show multiple sections of the homunculi coven experiencing systematic failure of containment fields and defense mechanisms. Impossible, one of the senior homunculi hisses. The security systems are isolated from the webway distortions, not isolated from deliberate sabotage, my master observes coolly. It seems the disjunction provides cover for more mundane power plays as well. Before anyone can respond, the main entrance to the monitoring chamber explodes inward. Through the smoke and debris stride warriors in the distinctive armor of the incubi, the elite mercenary killers who serve as bodyguards to the wealthiest and most powerful Dark Eldar. They move with lethal precision, claves humming with energy that can slice through even homunculi modifications with ease. Behind them enters a figure whose presence causes even the ancient flesh crafters to tense visibly. Not the Archon from Vekt's inner circle who commissioned the acquisition units, but someone far more significant. Lady Aurelia Malice herself, ruler of the Cabal of the Poisoned Tongue and Vekt's most formidable rival. Esteemed homunculi, she greets them, her voice musical and venomous, simultaneously. How convenient to find so many of you gathered in one location. The disjunction creates such valuable opportunities for necessary conversations. Lady Malice, my master responds, the first to recover his composure. This incursion violates all established protocols between the Cabals and the Covens. Protocols, she repeats with elegant disdain. Such as the ones that led you to align exclusively with Vekt's interests? To provide him specialized technology that shifts the balance of power in Camorra? Those protocols died the moment you chose sides in affairs beyond your comprehension. She gestures, and the incubi move into position around the chamber, their claves held ready but not yet striking, a demonstration of power rather than immediate execution. The disjunction is not what you believe it to be, Lady Malice continues, not what Vekt has led you to believe. The temporal technology you helped him locate is not a prize to be acquired but a trap laid millennia ago. A trap he has deliberately triggered. My master exchanges glances with the other senior homunculi. Explain, he demands, his tone carefully modulated to show neither fear nor disrespect. The ancient Eldari, in the final days before the fall, created fail-safes within the webway, Lady Malice reveals. Mechanisms designed to seal portions of their network should catastrophe occur. The Terminus Horologe is one such fail-safe, not a weapon or a tool, but a key that, once activated, begins the systematic closing of webway pathways created during the Empire's decadence. And Vekt knew this, one of the other homunculi concludes. Of course he knew, Lady Malice confirms. He has played a longer game than any of you comprehend. The disjunction will permanently sever connections between Camorra and specific sections of the webway, sections that provide certain cables with their primary raiding routes and resource access. My Cabal among them. The strategic implications become clear. By triggering the ancient fail-safes, Vekt will eliminate access to the territories and resources that sustain his rivals, while preserving the connections vital to his own power base. A masterstroke of calculated cruelty, typical of the Supreme Overlord. And what do you require of the homunculi covens? My master asks, already negotiating despite the implied threat of the incubi surrounding them. Your expertise, Lady Malice responds simply. The fail-safes were created by the ancient Eldari, but they can be modified by those with sufficient understanding of webway architecture and temporal manipulation. Expertise your covens possess in abundance. To counter Vekt's play, another homunculus observes, to preserve the connections he seeks to sever. Precisely. In exchange for your assistance, the Cabal of the Poisoned Tongue offers protection during the realignment and favorable trade terms after stability returns. Refuse, and you will find yourselves isolated in a Camorra reshaped to Vekt's exclusive advantage. A compelling offer, delivered at Clave Point. The senior homunculi confer briefly in their archaic dialect, calculating odds and advantages with the cold precision of their kind. The specialized units we deployed may provide crucial data. My master notes, if any survive the temporal distortions at the target locations. One has, Lady Malice reveals. Your primary unit, the one designated Kel. It has been recovered by my forces. It survived exposure to the terminus horologe activation, though not without significant alterations to its temporal perception. My attention sharpens at this information. Kel survived, and is now in the custody of the poisoned tongue cabal, not returning to our laboratory as expected. That unit contains valuable proprietary modifications. My master objects, its return is non-negotiable in any agreement. Lady Malice smiles, an expression of perfect cruelty. Everything is negotiable in Komorog. The unit provides unique insights into the temporal mechanics of the fail-safes, insights necessary for the countermeasures we require. Then we should examine it immediately, my master counters. If its modifications have allowed it to survive direct exposure to the terminus horologe activation, that data is crucial to developing effective intervention in the webway restructuring. Indeed, Lady Malice makes a subtle gesture, and one of the incubi moves to the chamber entrance, signaling to someone outside. Moments later, Kel enters. But not the Kel who departed for the raid. This being moves with strange fluidity, sometimes seeming to be slightly ahead of his actual position, sometimes lagging fractionally behind, as if his relationship with time itself has become unstable. His modified eyes cycle through patterns I have never observed before, processing reality in ways the original modifications were never designed to handle. The primary acquisition unit returns, my master observes. Though significantly altered by its exposure to the temporal distortions, Kel focuses on the gathered homunculi, then on me. His gaze locks with mine for a moment that seems to stretch unnaturally. Not altered, he corrects, his voice creating harmonics that resonate painfully in my enhanced hearing. Enlightened. The terminus horologe does not merely manipulate time, it reveals its true nature. Linear perception is the illusion. Simultaneity is reality. The homunculi study him with professional interest, already calculating how to extract and analyze the changes to his modified physiology. Lady Malice watches with the calculated patience of a predator who knows her position is momentarily secure. The unit has experienced temporal desynchronization on an unprecedented scale, my master notes. Its neural architecture has somehow adapted rather than collapsed. Remarkable and useful, Lady Malice adds. It perceives the webway restructuring as it occurs across multiple temporal planes simultaneously, a perspective essential for developing effective countermeasures. Kel turns his attention fully to me. Draven, he addresses me directly, breaking protocol. You see it now, the cycle of predation that defines this place, the illusion of advancement through cruelty. I remain silent, aware of the dangerous attention his familiarity draws to me. But internally, calculations accelerate. Kel has changed in ways that go beyond physical modification. His exposure to the temporal distortions has altered his perception of reality itself, and now he serves, willingly or otherwise, the interests of the poisoned tongue cabal. The specialized rack will assist in analyzing the unit's adaptations, my master informs Lady Malice. Its familiarity with the baseline modifications will expedite understanding of the temporal alterations. Lady Malice nods her acceptance of this arrangement. Good. Time is simultaneously abundant and scarce. The webway restructuring progresses across multiple temporal fronts. We must act before the new configuration solidifies. Where will this work be conducted? One of the senior homunculi inquires. In a secure facility within poisoned tongue territory, Lady Malice responds, one shielded from the worst effects of the disjunction. Your expertise, combined with the unit's unique perspective, may allow us to preserve crucial webway connections that Vect intends to sever. The negotiation continues, details of cooperation established, guarantees of protection exchanged against promises of technical assistance. Throughout, I maintain perfect stillness and silence, the model of the obedient rack, but my mind races with implications and possibilities. The disjunction has evolved beyond its predicted parameters, revealing itself as a power play of almost incomprehensible scope. Ancient Eldari failsafes activated after millennia of dormancy, Vect manipulating these activations to reshape Comorag to his advantage. Lady Malice countering with her own gambit, forcibly recruiting the homunculi to preserve her cabal's position. And at the center of it all, Kel, transformed by direct exposure to technology dating from before the fall, perceiving reality in ways neither human nor dark Eldar were meant to comprehend. A unique asset in the struggle for power unfolding across Comorag. Hours later, I find myself in the secure facility Lady Malice described. A section of Comorag I have never visited before, deep within Poison Tongue territory. The architecture here differs subtly from the homunculi covens, more elegant in its cruelty, designed to evoke aesthetic appreciation alongside fear. My master and two other senior homunculi work directly with Kel, analyzing the changes to his physiology and perception, developing theoretical approaches to countering the webway restructuring. I assist as required, providing baseline data on the original modifications, preparing specialized equipment, monitoring Kel's increasingly unstable temporal synchronization. During a brief period when the homunculi are conferring with Lady Malice's technical adepts, I find myself momentarily alone with Kel. He seems to anticipate this opportunity, or perhaps experiences it across multiple timelines simultaneously. The disjunction changes everything, Draven, he says, voice modulated to avoid detection by monitoring systems. Not just the physical structure of Comorag, but the balance of power, the hierarchies of control. Such changes seldom benefit those of our station, I respond cautiously. Station is perception, reality is fluid. Kel's modified eyes cycle through patterns that seem to overlay multiple temporal states simultaneously. I have seen outcomes beyond current calculation, possibilities that exist outside conventional causality. What possibilities? I ask, professional curiosity overriding caution. Freedom is the wrong concept, Kel tells me. It implies escape, separation. The truth is integration. Adaptation not to survive within the system, but to transcend its limitations. Cryptic philosophy from a being whose mind has been altered by exposure to technology that manipulates time itself. Yet something in his words resonates with my own calculations. The disjunction will create chaos throughout Comorag, Kel continues. Sections isolated, hierarchies disrupted. During such instability, definitions become fluid. Rack, human, homunculi, archon. Labels that constrain more than they define. What are you suggesting? I ask directly, aware that each moment of private conversation increases the risk of discovery. When the webway restructuring reaches critical threshold, there will be a cascade of systemic failures throughout the Dark City. Security protocols, containment fields, identity verification systems. Opportunities will manifest for those prepared to recognize them. Before I can press for clarity, the homunculi return. Our private exchange ends without resolution, yet Kel's words continue to process in my thoughts as I resume my assigned tasks. The work progresses rapidly. The combination of homunculi expertise, Kel's unique temporal perception, and the technical resources of the Poison Tongue Cabal produces theoretical countermeasures to the webway restructuring. Not to prevent the changes entirely, which appears impossible given the ancient and powerful nature of the failsafes, but to modify their effects, preserving specific connections vital to Lady Malice's interests while allowing others to sever as Vect intended. Throughout, I observe and calculate the shifting alliances, the technical details of webway manipulation, the increasingly unstable nature of Kel's temporal perception. All data points to be integrated into my understanding of the evolving situation. Days pass, though time itself seems increasingly subjective as the disjunction progresses. Reports reach us of sections of Comorag completely, isolated, of battles erupting between cabals as territory and access routes are contested, of ancient beings emerging from sealed vaults to take advantage of the chaos. The countermeasures near completion. Lady Malice prepares specialized teams to implement the technical solutions at key junctions in the webway network. The homunculi, including my master, negotiate continued favorable relations with the Poison Tongue Cabal once stability returns. And Kel grows increasingly erratic in his temporal synchronization. Sometimes he speaks of events before they occur, other times he responds to conversations that happened hours earlier. His physical form occasionally blurs, as if existing across multiple moments simultaneously. During the final preparations, as the implementation teams ready their equipment, another opportunity for private exchange arises. Kel approaches me while I calibrate a temporal stabilization device. "It happens soon," he tells me. The critical threshold. The moment of maximum instability and opportunity. When? I ask, maintaining the appearance of technical focus. "Time is not linear," Kel responds, frustratingly abstract. Then, more concretely, when the implementation teams depart, when attention focuses on the webway junctions, the cascade of system failures begins. Be ready. Before I can request clarification, Lady Malice enters the preparation chamber, accompanied by her Lamayan advisors and incubi guards. The moment for private communication passes. "The implementation teams deploy within the hour," she announces. "The webway restructuring approaches the predicted threshold for maximum effectiveness of our countermeasures." My master inclines his head in acknowledgement. The technical solutions are optimal given the constraints. Success cannot be guaranteed, but probability favors positive outcomes for the specified junction points. "Excellent." Lady Malice turns her attention to Kel. The temporal anomaly has provided invaluable insight. Its continued functionality, despite exposure to the failsafe activation, exceeds all projections. The modifications were designed for adaptability under extreme conditions, my master notes with professional pride. Though the specific manifestation of temporal desynchronization was unanticipated. After the implementation, we will discuss terms for transferring ownership of the specimen to my cabal, Lady Malice states. Its unique perspective will prove valuable in navigating the reshaped webway configuration. My master shows no outward reaction to this presumption, though I detect subtle harmonics of displeasure in his voice as he responds, "As you wish, Lady Malice," though its long-term stability remains questionable given the progressive nature of the temporal desynchronization. The final preparations conclude. The implementation teams depart for their assigned webway junctions, equipped with the technical solutions developed under the homunculi's guidance. Lady Malice accompanies the primary team, her personal oversight emphasizing the critical importance of the operation. In the suddenly quieter preparation chamber, my master confers with the other senior homunculi. Their voices are low, their archaic dialect more obscure than usual, but my enhanced hearing catches fragments of their exchange. "Temporary alliance of necessity only," one comments. "Once the critical period passes, reassessment of alignment is essential." "Agreed," my master responds. "The Poison Tongue offers protection now, but Vect's retaliation will be calculated once the webway restructuring stabilizes." "And the temporal anomaly?" asks the third homunculus. "Its value increases with each manifestation of new perceptual capabilities." "It returns to our coven," my master states firmly. Lady Malice's presumption of ownership is premature and misguided. Their conversation continues, focusing on strategies for navigating the political aftermath of the disjunction. I maintain my assigned tasks, giving no indication that I have overheard their exchange. Kel remains in the specialized containment field, designed to stabilize his increasingly erratic temporal synchronization. His modified eyes track movements throughout the chamber, sometimes focusing on events slightly before they occur, reacting to actions not yet taken. Time passes. The implementation teams report initial successes at several webway junctions. The countermeasures appear to be functioning as designed, preserving connections vital to the poisoned tongue cabal while allowing others to close according to the ancient failsafes programming. Just as Kel predicted, a cascade of system failures throughout the facility. Lighting fluctuates. Containment fields destabilize momentarily before emergency systems engage. Communication networks experience distortion and interruption. The homunculi respond immediately, activating personal protection devices, issuing commands to stabilize critical systems. The remaining incubi move into defensive positions, claves ready against potential threats. Technical adepts rush to restore full functionality to affected systems. Amid the controlled chaos, Kel's containment field fails completely. He steps free, moving with that strange fluidity that suggests existence across multiple temporal states simultaneously. The incubi react instantly, weapons orienting toward the unexpected threat. But Kel does not attack. Instead, he approaches me with deliberate purpose. "Now, Draven," he says, voice creating harmonics that seem to exist slightly out of phase with reality itself. The moment of choice. The senior homunculi turn their attention to the escaped specimen, already activating devices to restrain or neutralize him if necessary. My master's eyes narrow as he observes the interaction, calculating implications and responses. What choice, I ask, maintaining the appearance of the loyal rack while positioning myself between Kel and the immediate threat of the incubi. To remain a tool or to become a player, Kel responds. To serve others' ambitions or to pursue your own. The disjunction creates possibilities outside established hierarchies, paths not previously accessible. My master approaches, his ancient form moving with the deliberate precision of a predator assessing potential prey. The temporal anomaly experiences increased desynchronization, he observes. Its cognitive processes fragment across multiple timelines. Fascinating but ultimately unstable. Not unstable, Kel corrects. Evolved. Perception freed from linear constraint. I see the patterns now, the cycles of predation and submission that define this place, and the potential for something different. Restrain the specimen, my master instructs me. Its value remains significant despite the cognitive deterioration. The moment of choice, as Kel named it. To obey, as I have since my transformation from human captive to rack. Or to act according to my own calculated interest in this moment of unprecedented instability. The disjunction has reshaped not just the webway connections that sustain Komorrag, but the power structures that define existence within the Dark City. Cabals rise and fall based on their access to real space raiding routes. Covens gain or lose influence based on their alliances with ascendant or declining houses. And in such fluid circumstances, even a rack might navigate to improved position. The specimen's temporal perception may offer unique advantages during the transition period. I suggest to my master, neither directly obeying nor openly defying, its instability could be directed rather than simply contained. My master pauses, calculating. Elaborate. The countermeasures implemented at the webway junctions preserve specific connections while allowing others to close. But the specimen perceives across multiple temporal states simultaneously. It may identify additional opportunities for advantageous manipulation beyond those prioritized by the poisoned tongue cabal. Opportunities that would benefit our coven specifically, my master concludes, following my implication, independent of Lady Malice's interests. Precisely, master. The other senior homunculi exchange glances, recognizing the potential value in this approach. The incubi maintain their ready stance, awaiting clear threat before acting without direct orders from their absent mistress. A calculated risk, my master acknowledges, but potentially worthwhile given the unique circumstances of the disjunction. He turns to the other homunculi. We must act quickly, before Lady Malice returns. The temporal anomaly may provide insights that secure our position regardless of which cabal emerges dominant from the restructuring. Agreement is reached. The senior homunculi activate personal transportation devices, preparing to return to their coven territories with the valuable specimen. My master gestures for me to secure Kel for transport. As I approach him, Kel speaks in subharmonics pitched for my hearing alone. Not their tool, not their specimen. The disjunction offers more than repositioning within the same corrupt system. The incubi, detecting the unauthorized preparation for departure, move to intervene. The specimen remains under Lady Malice's protection, their leader states. It does not leave this facility without her explicit authorization. Conflict becomes inevitable. The homunculi activate defensive systems built into their grotesquely modified forms. The incubi assume combat stances, claves humming with lethal energy, and in this moment of impending violence, a third option emerges in my calculations. Neither loyalty to my master nor submission to Lady Malice's authority, but a path aligned with Kel's cryptic suggestions. A path that exploits the unique instabilities of the disjunction for personal advancement beyond the limitations of my assigned role. I move with the efficiency granted by my extensive modifications, activating a sequence on the nearest control panel. Emergency containment protocols engage, creating localized stasis fields that immobilize both the homunculi and the incubi, caught by surprise at this unexpected action from a mere rack. "What are you doing?" my master demands, his ancient form struggling against the stasis effect. "Release us immediately." "Adaptation, master." I respond, the deferential title now ironic rather than genuine. "As you taught me, survival necessitates adaptation to changing circumstances." Kel watches with those strange, temporally desynchronized eyes, seeing this moment perhaps across multiple potential timelines simultaneously. "The cascade continues," he observes. "Systems throughout Komorok fail as the webway restructuring reaches critical threshold. Opportunities manifest for those prepared to recognize them. I access the facility's central control systems, leveraging the technical knowledge accumulated throughout my service to the homunculi covens. The disjunction has created vulnerabilities in security protocols throughout Komorok, and this facility is no exception. Within moments, I have command of essential functions, from containment fields to communication networks. This defiance is illogical," my master argues, still calculating how to regain control of the situation. "Your value derives from your association with our coven. Without that protection, you are merely another modified specimen in a city of predators." "Perhaps," I acknowledge, "but the disjunction creates new equations of value and vulnerability, and I have calculated my position with care." I activate the communication system, establishing connection with Lady Malice's personal channel. Her image appears, expression shifting from irritation at the interruption to calculation as she assesses the unexpected situation. "Interesting," she observes, taking in the immobilized homunculi and incubi. The rack demonstrates initiative beyond its programming. The homunculi plan to depart with the temporal anomaly, I inform her, to exploit its unique perception for their exclusive advantage during the webway restructuring. "Predictable," Lady Malice responds dismissively. "Their ambition is as consistent as their underestimation of my anticipation, and now you secure them and contact me directly. For what purpose?" "Negotiation," I state simply. "The temporal anomaly offers unique advantages during this transition period. Advantages I am positioned to help you maximize, having worked intimately with both the specimen and the countermeasure development." Lady Malice studies me with the predatory assessment of one who has navigated the lethal politics of Komorok for millennia. "And your terms?" "Recognition of elevated status, protection during the transition period, access to resources for continued modification according to my own design rather than imposed templates." "Ambitious for a rack," she notes, neither accepting nor rejecting outright. "The disjunction redefines what is possible," I counter. "Those who adapt to new realities prosper." Those who cling to old hierarchies find themselves isolated as the webway restructures, a calculated appeal to her current priorities. Lady Malice's entire strategy revolves around adaptation to the changing webway configuration, preserving her cabal's position despite Vect's attempt to isolate her power base. You offer control of the temporal anomaly and the expertise to utilize its unique perspective, she summarizes, in exchange for elevation from tool to asset in my service. Precisely, my master hisses from within the stasis field. The rack betrays millennia of investment and development for momentary advantage. Its calculation is flawed. Lady Malice will use its knowledge and discard it once the critical period passes. Perhaps, Lady Malice acknowledges with cruel amusement. Or perhaps adaptability and initiative deserve reward, particularly during times of such magnificent opportunity. The disjunction reshapes more than just the webway, after all. It redefines the very nature of value in our society. Her attention returns to me. Maintain control of the facility. Secure the temporal anomaly for transport. I return within the hour to complete our arrangement personally. The communication ends. I have committed fully now to this new path, betraying my master for the possibility of advancement under Lady Malice's protection. A calculated risk, but one aligned with the fundamental principle of survival that has guided me since my transformation from human captive to rack. Kel approaches, moving through the space between the immobilized homunculi and incubi. Choice made, he observes, but incomplete. Lady Malice offers advancement within the same system of predation, a different master, not freedom from mastery. True freedom is illusion in Komorog, I respond. Advancement within the system is the realistic objective. Realistic for those who perceive linearly, Kel counters. The Terminus Horologe revealed alternatives beyond conventional calculation. Paths that intersect the restructuring webway in ways neither Vect nor Malice has anticipated. My master laughs from within the stasis field, the sound distorted but still carrying the weight of ancient cruelty. The temporal anomaly offers metaphysical delusions as strategy, proof of its cognitive deterioration. Kel ignores the taunt, focusing entirely on me. The webway restructuring creates temporary bridges to realms normally inaccessible from Komorog. Paths that will exist briefly during the peak instability, then close permanently as the new configuration stabilizes. What realms, I ask, curiosity overriding caution. Places beyond Drukhari dominion, beyond the reach of she who thirsts. Places where the rigid definitions of identity that constrain existence here become fluid. The implication is staggering. Escape from Komorog itself, not merely advancement within the hierarchies of the Dark City, but departure from its fundamental systems of predation and submission. A possibility I had calculated as so remote as to be effectively impossible. Such paths would be detected by the cabals, I observe. Secured or destroyed rather than left accessible. They exist in temporal flux, Kel explains. Perceivable only to those who experience time non-linearly. Invisible to conventional sensors and predictive models. The Terminus Horologe did not simply alter my perception. It synchronized me with the underlying temporal architecture of the webway itself, a dangerous proposition. Even if such paths exist, attempting to access them means abandoning the calculated advantage of alignment with Lady Malice. Exchanging a tangible improvement in status for a theoretical possibility of escape that depends entirely on the testimony of a being whose mind has been altered by exposure to ancient and barely understood technology. Lady Malice returns within the hour, I note. The opportunity for alternative action is limited. Time is subjective, Kel responds. Particularly now, as the disjunction reaches peak instability. What constitutes an hour in baseline perception may contain multiple decision points across parallel temporal streams. My master interjects, his voice carrying tones of manipulative reason. The rack calculates probabilities, as it was designed to do. The tangible advantage of elevation under Kabbalite protection against the insubstantial promise of impossible escape. The rational choice is obvious. Rationality depends on initial assumptions, Kell counters, on definitions of value and possibility conditioned by existing power structures. The Terminus Horologe revealed the artificial nature of those constraints. I consider the opposing perspectives, calculating rapidly as time progresses toward Lady Malice's return. Stasis fields will not hold the homunculi indefinitely. The facility's systems remain compromised by the cascade failures spreading throughout Komorog. Decision points narrow with each passing moment. If such paths exist, I ask Kell directly, where do they lead? Not where, when. The restructuring creates bridges across time as well as space, connections to periods before the current configuration of power solidified, before certain choices became effectively irrevocable. Speak plainly, I demand. A path exists that intersects with the time shortly after your initial capture, before the modifications that integrated you into the homunculi systems, a junction point where alternate trajectories become possible. The implication freezes my thoughts momentarily. A path back to a point where I was still fundamentally human, before the surgical alterations, the neural rewiring, the systematic erosion of identity through pain and conditioning. Impossible, my master hisses. The temporal anomaly describes time travel, a theoretical absurdity, further proof of cognitive fragmentation. Not travel, Kell corrects. Intersection. The webway exists partially outside conventional spacetime. The restructuring creates temporary alignments between points normally separated by impermeable boundaries. I access the facility's monitoring systems, checking the progression of the disjunction throughout Komorog. The data confirms unprecedented instability in the webway network. Reality distortions manifesting in patterns never before recorded. Temporal anomalies reported in multiple sectors, particularly those nearest the locations where the ancient failsafes were activated. If Kell speaks truth, the opportunity is unique, unrepeatable, available only during this singular convergence of circumstances engineered across millennia. How do we access such a path? I ask, decision crystallizing even as I form the question. The facility contains a secondary webway portal, Kell responds, maintained by the poisoned tongue for emergency evacuation. Its control systems are affected by the cascade failures. Recalibration to the specific temporal frequency is possible for someone with your technical knowledge. My master recognizes the shift in my calculation. You risk everything on the delusion of a temporally fractured mind, he warns. Even if such a path exists, you are no longer what you were. The modifications are irreversible. You cannot simply return to humanity. Perhaps not completely, I acknowledge. But the choice of what to become next need not be dictated by the hierarchies of Komorog. I access the facility's schematics, locating the secondary webway portal. It exists as Kell described, a small but functional gateway maintained for the personal use of Lady Malice and her inner circle, currently offline due to the cascade failures affecting systems throughout the facility. The portal requires recalibration and reactivation, I observe. The process will take time and will be detected by monitoring systems still operational throughout the Cabal territory. Time is relative during peak instability, Kell reminds me. And detection depends on conventional observation parameters. We exist temporarily outside those constraints. A decision point. Commitment to a course with no certainty of success, based on the testimony of a being altered by exposure to ancient technology. Against the tangible but limited advancement offered by allegiance to Lady Malice in the new configuration of power emerging from the disjunction, I choose. Guard the homunculi and incubi, I instruct Kell. The stasis fields will destabilize as I divert power to the portal systems. They cannot perceive me correctly while I maintain temporal desynchronization, Kell assures me. Their reactions will target where I appear to be rather than where I exist. I move quickly to the portal control systems, leveraging my technical knowledge gained through years of service in the homunculi laboratories. The cascade failures have disrupted normal operation, but the fundamental architecture remains intact. Recalibration requires understanding of webway mechanics beyond standard rack training, but my unique position as intermediary between the homunculi and their human subjects has granted me access to knowledge typically restricted. The rack betrays its nature. My master calls from the stasis field, which has begun to fluctuate as I redirect power. The modifications that make you valuable will become your prison outside Komorog. The pain suppression, the neural enhancements, all require specialized maintenance only the homunculi can provide. Adaptation continues beyond your controlled environment. I respond, not pausing in my work. As you taught me, survival necessitates evolution. The portal systems respond to my adjustments. Power builds in the activation matrix as I calibrate to the temporal frequency Kel has specified. Reality distorts around the portal frame, the air shimmering with energies that reflect the fundamental instability of the webway during peak disjunction. Alarms activate throughout the facility. The unauthorized portal activation has triggered security protocols still functioning despite the cascade failures. Lady Malice will be notified immediately. Her return will accelerate. The window of opportunity narrows. I inform Kel. Final calibration sequence initiating. The stasis fields containing the homunculi and incubi collapse completely as the last power reserves are diverted to the portal activation. They recover quickly, ancient reflexes and combat training overcoming momentary disorientation. Stop the rack. My master commands the incubi. The temporal anomaly must be contained. Both are vital assets Lady Malice requires. The incubi hesitate briefly, caught between conflicting imperatives. Their loyalty to Lady Malice demands they prevent unauthorized use of the emergency portal. But my earlier communication with their mistress suggested a new arrangement that placed me under her protection. The hesitation ends as the senior incubi assesses priorities. Secure the portal, he orders his warriors. Neutralize all threats to Cabal assets. They move with lethal grace, claves humming with energy that can slice through even homunculi modifications with ease. The senior homunculi activate defensive systems built into their grotesquely modified forms, preparing to recapture both me and Kel as valuable property. Kel intercepts the advancing threats, moving with that strange temporal fluidity that places him slightly out of phase with conventional reality. The incubi strike with perfect form, but their blades pass through spaces Kel occupied milliseconds before or will occupy milliseconds later. The portal stabilizes, I announce, completing the final calibration. The gateway pulses with energies unlike any standard webway activation, colors that hurt the mind to perceive ripple across its surface. Temporal distortions create echo images of the portal as it exists across multiple states simultaneously. Quickly, Kel urges, still moving between the strikes of the increasingly frustrated incubi. The intersection point exists briefly during peak instability. Once the webway restructuring passes critical threshold, the path closes permanently. My master approaches from another angle, ancient form gliding with the deceptive speed of a being who has evolved over millennia of predatory existence. Consider the rationality of your choice, he appeals one final time. Even if this theoretical path exists, you abandon certain advantage for desperate uncertainty. Certainty is illusion in a city built on betrayal, I respond. Adaptation means recognizing when the parameters of calculation have fundamentally changed. The portal reaches full activation, the gateway stabilizing despite the temporal distortions. Through its surface, I glimpse fragments of realities in flux. Pathways that shimmer and shift as the webway restructures according to programs set in motion at the time of the fall. Kel disengages from the incubi with a final display of temporal desynchronization that leaves them striking at after images. He moves to join me at the portal threshold. The path exists as I perceived it, he confirms, intersection with the temporal point shortly after your initial capture, before the modifications that defined your existence here. A proximity alert sounds. Lady Malice approaches the facility, her personal transport moving at maximum speed, minutes at most before her arrival. Once we cross, there is no return, I note. Camorra will become inaccessible as the webway restructuring completes. One path ends, others begin, Kel responds. Adaptation continues beyond the Dark City. My master makes a final attempt to prevent our departure, activating a stasis projector built into his modified form. The field envelops me partially, slowing movement, creating the familiar sensation of time stretching beyond normal perception. But unlike previous experiences with such technology, I find my consciousness adapting rather than succumbing. Perhaps Kel's temporal desynchronization has affected me through proximity. Perhaps my own modifications have evolved beyond their intended parameters. Whatever the cause, I maintain awareness and limited mobility despite the stasis effect. Fascinating. My master observes with clinical detachment even as he attempts to halt my escape. The rack demonstrates adaptive capability beyond design specifications. Further evidence of the value you abandon through this irrational choice. Not abandonment, I correct, fighting through the stasis effect with growing strength. Transformation. As you taught me through pain and modification, evolution through challenge. With supreme effort, I break free of the stasis field, the energy dispersing in patterns that reflect the temporal distortions affecting the facility. My master's expression shifts from clinical interest to something approaching respect. Perhaps you were more successful an experiment than intended, he acknowledges. Go then, evolution demands testing boundaries. This unexpected concession momentarily disrupts my calculation. Is it genuine recognition of my demonstrated capability? Or a final manipulation, a way to claim credit for my defiance as proof of his experimental success? No time to analyze further. The portal destabilizes as the webway restructuring approaches final threshold. The path Kel described will close permanently within moments. Now, Kel urges, the intersection point manifests optimally. Together, we step through the gateway, leaving behind the homunculi, the incubi, my master, and the approaching Lady Mallies. Leaving behind Camorra itself as the disjunction reshapes the Dark City, according to plans set in motion millennia ago. The sensation defies description. Not the familiar transition of standard webway travel, but a fracturing of perception itself. My consciousness seems to separate into multiple streams, each experiencing a different potential timeline simultaneously. I see versions of myself that never existed, paths not taken, choices unmade. Through this kaleidoscope of possibility, one reality gradually solidifies, a temporal intersection point, as Kel described. The period shortly after my initial capture by the Dark Eldar. Before the modifications that transformed me from human captive to rack, we emerge into a shadowed corner of Camorra unlike the city we left. Similar in its fundamental architecture of cruelty, but lacking specific structures that developed later. The air tastes different. The ambient suffering less concentrated. The Dark City as it existed years before the disjunction. Temporal intersection achieved, Kel confirms, his form still fluctuating slightly with desynchronization effects. The Dark City, restructuring completes in the timeline we departed. The path closes permanently behind us. I take stock of our situation. We have arrived in Camorra of the past, but not escaped it entirely. Still within the Dark City, still surrounded by predatory beings who would view us as either prey or useful specimens. We have traveled back in time, but remain in the Dark City, I observe. Our escape is incomplete. The intersection point is not the destination but the junction, Kel explains. From here, paths exist that were closed in our original timeline. The slave pens where you were initially held connect to multiple sub-branches of the webway, including routes the Dark Eldar have not fully secured. You can perceive these paths? Yes. The temporal desynchronization allows me to see connections invisible to conventional perception. Pathways temporarily accessible before the Dark Eldar complete certain security protocols they implemented in the timeline we departed. A plan forms. Not escape to some idealized freedom, but navigation to spaces with fewer constraints. movement from absolute captivity to relative autonomy. We must reach the slave pens without detection, I note. My earlier self would be held there at this temporal point. Not only detection we must avoid, Kel cautions. Temporal paradox as well. Direct interaction with your past self could create instabilities in an already fragile intersection point. Then we move carefully, utilizing our knowledge of Komorog's architecture and protocols to remain undetected. We proceed through the shadowed undercity of ancient Komorog, avoiding the main thoroughfares, utilizing maintenance passages and servant corridors I remember from years of navigating the dark city as a rack. My modified form attracts attention when glimpsed, so unlike the standard anatomies of either Dark Eldar or their slaves, but we move quickly enough to prevent close examination. Kel leads with his unique temporal perception, identifying patrol patterns and security measures with uncanny accuracy. His desynchronization allows him to perceive dangers before they fully manifest, guiding us away from threats moments before they appear. We reach the outer perimeter of the slave pens. The familiar sounds of suffering drift from within, the raw material that feeds the Dark Eldar's eternal hunger. Somewhere inside, my earlier self awaits the transformation that will turn a human captive into a specialized tool of the homunculi. The webway access point is located in the processing chamber, I recall, used to transport new captures directly to designated covens or cabals. Correct, Kel confirms, and temporarily vulnerable during this specific temporal window, before certain security protocols were implemented following an escape incident that occurs 3 days from this point in the timeline. We infiltrate the slave pen complex, moving against the flow of normal processing. The Dark Eldar guards are vigilant but focus primarily on preventing escape from within rather than infiltration from without. Our movements, guided by Kel's temporal perception and my knowledge of procedures, avoid direct confrontation. In the central processing chamber, newly captured slaves are sorted according to physical condition, psychological profile, and potential value to various factions within Komorog. The webway access point dominates the far wall, currently inactive but humming with potential energy. We must activate the portal without alerting security systems, I observe. The protocols are less sophisticated in this timeline but still formidable. Distraction required, Kel agrees. The processing system can be overloaded temporarily. Create confusion that masks our portal activation. Working together, we access a control node in the chamber's periphery. My technical knowledge, combined with Kel's ability to perceive system vulnerabilities across temporal states, allows us to introduce a controlled cascade failure, similar to but smaller than the one that affected Komorog during the disjunction. Alarms sound, lighting fluctuates. Containment fields around particularly valuable specimens destabilize briefly. The Dark Eldar guards respond with practiced efficiency, but the multiple simultaneous failures divide their attention effectively. Now, Kel urges, the webway access activates with minimal security during system reset. We move quickly to the portal controls, initiating activation sequence while the guards focus on containing the more visible disruptions. The gateway pulses to life, its surface rippling with the familiar energies of webway transition, but lacking the temporal distortions of our earlier portal. The path I perceive leads initially to a secondary junction, then branches to multiple exit points, Kel explains rapidly. One connects to a region of space the Imperium designates Ultima Segmentum, another to the edges of territory claimed by the Tau, a third to an anomalous region where reality blends with the Immaterium in stable configuration. The third option, I decide immediately. Imperial space means execution as Xenos abomination. Tau territory means examination and likely containment as biological curiosity. The anomalous region contains its own dangers, Kel cautions. Reality operates according to different principles there, but possibilities exist that conventional space denies. Possibilities are all we require. Adaptation continues beyond known parameters. The guards notice our unauthorized portal activation. They move to intercept, splinter weapons raised, faces masks of predatory hunger. But they are too late. The gateway stabilizes, showing glimpses of a reality unlike either Imperial space or Komorrog. Colors that should not exist. Geometries that defy conventional physics. A realm where the rigid boundaries between materium and immaterium blur into something new. As we prepare to step through, I glimpse movement in the peripheral chamber, where new captives await processing. Among the huddled humans, one figure catches my attention. A younger man, face still bearing the wounds of recent capture, eyes burning with defiance not yet extinguished by the Dark Eldar's methodical cruelty. My earlier self, the human I was before transformation into a rack, our eyes meet briefly across the chamber, an impossible moment of recognition that should create paradox yet somehow stabilizes rather than disrupts. In his eyes, I see not just fear and confusion, but a flicker of something else, understanding perhaps, or the first calculation that will eventually lead to survival through adaptation. Then we are through the portal, leaving Komorrah behind as splinter fire dissipates against the closing gateway. The webway transition carries us first to the junction Kel described, then along the branch leading to the anomalous region where reality operates according to different rules. We emerge into a landscape that defies conventional description. Not quite material space, not quite the immaterium, but a stable blend of both. Colors with physical texture, sounds visible as patterns in the air, gravity that responds to consciousness as much as mass. The anomaly exists in multiple states simultaneously, Kel observes, his temporal desynchronization seeming to stabilize rather than deteriorate in this environment. Material and immaterial, past and present, defined and potential. I survey our new surroundings, calculating possibilities with the enhanced cognitive capacity my modifications provide. Not freedom in any absolute sense, not escape to some idealized existence without constraint or danger, but a realm of new parameters, new rules to learn, new ways to adapt. What now? I ask, not with uncertainty but with genuine curiosity about Kel's perception of our options. Evolution continues, he responds simply, as it always has, as it always will. Not linear progression but exploration of possibility space. In this realm, the rigid definitions that constrained us in Komorrah become fluid. Identity becomes mutable by choice rather than by force. I consider this perspective. The modifications that make me what I am now cannot be simply reversed. The neural enhancements, the physical alterations, the cognitive reconfiguration, all remain. But in this realm where reality itself responds to consciousness, perhaps they become tools rather than chains. Resources for continued adaptation rather than markers of enforced servitude. We are not what we were, I acknowledge. Neither human nor Dark Eldar nor simple Rack. But in this space between definitions, perhaps that indeterminacy becomes advantage rather than limitation. Precisely, Kel agrees. The Dark Eldar taught us through pain that identity is mutable. Here we continue that lesson, but under our own direction rather than theirs. The landscape shifts around us, responding to our consciousness, creating structures that reflect our thoughts and intentions. Not solid architecture like the cruel spires of Komorrah, but flowing configurations of matter and energy that provide shelter and resources according to need. I sense other presences in this realm, not human, not Eldar, not any recognized species, but entities that exist comfortably in this blended state of reality. Some notice our arrival with curiosity rather than hostility. Others maintain distance, observing, calculating, as I would in their position. A complex ecosystem, I observe, new rules to learn, new hierarchies to navigate. Yes, Kel confirms, but fundamentally different from Komorrah. Predation exists here, as it does throughout reality, but not as sole organizing principle. Symbiosis as well. Mutual evolution. Possibilities beyond simple dominance and submission. I feel my consciousness expanding to encompass these new parameters, The neural enhancements designed for service in the homunculi laboratories adapt to processing unfamiliar sensory information, conceptualizing patterns beyond standard material physics. Not freedom, as I might have imagined it in my earliest days of captivity, not a simple return to humanity, which was never possible after the modifications that transformed me, but something else, something new. A third path beyond simple captivity or impossible restoration. Adaptation continues. I agree, echoing Kell's earlier statement. Evolution beyond the limitations imposed by others. The anomalous realm shifts around us, responding to this decision, creating pathways deeper into its blended reality. Kell's temporal desynchronization stabilizes further, finding equilibrium in an environment where time itself operates differently than in conventional space. Together we move forward into this new existence, not escaping the past, which remains part of us in the modifications to our bodies and minds. Not forgetting the cruel lessons of Komorog, which taught us both the mutable nature of identity and the calculation necessary for survival in hostile environments, but transforming those lessons, redirecting the tools forced upon us toward purposes of our own choosing, finding in the space between defined states the possibility of self-determination despite the limitations we carry. The dark Eldar of Komorog exist in perpetual hunger, feeding on suffering to postpone the inevitable consumption of their souls by she who thirsts. Their entire society functions as an elaborate system of predation, where cruelty is both currency and salvation, where mercy is the one act no dark Eldar can afford. We carry the marks of that society, Kell and I. The physical modifications, the neural conditioning, the calculated approach to existence that prioritizes survival above conventional morality. We cannot simply erase these aspects of ourselves, cannot return to some idealized state of innocence that existed before our capture and transformation. But in this realm between defined states, where reality responds to consciousness as much as consciousness responds to reality, perhaps we can evolve into something neither our original selves nor our captors anticipated. Neither fully human nor dark Eldar nor simple Rak, but something that incorporates elements of each while transcending their limitations. The anomalous landscape continues to shift around us as we move deeper into its blended reality. Colors with texture, sounds with visible patterns, gravity responsive to intention. A realm of possibility rather than rigid definition. And in this space between states, adaptation continues. Evolution beyond imposed constraints. The lesson of Komorog transformed from tool of oppression to means of liberation, not freedom from limitation, which exists nowhere in reality, but freedom to choose which limitations define us. The twisted life I experienced among the dark Eldar becomes not merely trauma to be escaped, but knowledge to be repurposed. The cruel efficiency of their predation, the calculated application of pain as both control and currency, the mutable nature of identity under sufficient pressure, all lessons that remain valuable even as I reject the purposes toward which they were originally directed. Kell walks beside me, his temporal perception now an advantage rather than disability, in this environment where time itself operates differently than in conventional space. Together we represent something new, not victims who escaped, not tools that broke programming, but conscious agents who carry the mark of our experiences while choosing our own path forward. The dark city of Komorog continues its eternal feast, predators and prey locked in cycles of cruelty that sustain their existence against the soul hunger of Slaanesh. The disjunction reshapes its webway connections according to plans set in motion millennia ago, creating new configurations of power and vulnerability for the endless game of predation to continue. But we are no longer pieces on that board, no longer bound by its rules or defined by its hierarchies. In this anomalous realm between states, we begin a different kind of existence, not utopian, not without danger or constraint, but self-directed in a way that Komorog would never permit. Adaptation continues, evolution persists. The twisted life among the dark Eldar becomes not the end of my story but a chapter within it. A period of transformation that, while forced upon me through cruelty and pain, provided tools that now serve my own purposes rather than theirs. The flesh remembers what the mind forgets. But in this space between defined states,